A group of heroes heads into the dark forest on a mission to liberate their homeland. Each wields a powerful weapon known as a regalia, legendary armaments that grant power far beyond human limits. So naturally, they're feeling pretty confident about taking down the dark beasts lurking in the forest. That confidence lasts exactly 5 seconds, because the moment they arrive, their poor driver gets yeeted into oblivion by a giant beast. With no time to waste mourning the guy, R.I.P., brave NPC, the team springs into action. Their fearless leader, Stefan, commands everyone to form up and charges straight into the den of monsters. The cutlass-wielding hero slices through beasts like he's auditioning for a Blender commercial with his whirlwind technique, while Stefan decapitates a massive snake with a single swing. Unfortunately, even headless, the snake is still in the mood for murder. But just as it lunges at Stefan, Alicia Glenfall pierces its eye with her sword, finally putting the thing down for good. So far, so good. With the lesser monsters cleared, the group delves deeper into the cave, hunting the fearsome beast Lord of the South. At the heart of the cavern, they come face to face with none other than Clevitus of the Moonlight. And you know it's serious when the monster has a slow motion or a glowing boss music entrance. Everyone feels the pressure from Clevitus' sheer presence, but Stefan, bless his optimism, believes they can win with the power of friendship. Yeah, no, friendship isn't going to cut it here. Clevitus promptly redecorates the cave wall using Stefan's blood. The team's tank, thinking he can do better, leaps in for an attack and gets instantly beheaded midair. The rest finally start to grasp the harsh truth. They're way out of their league. But it's too late to retreat. Clevitus begins picking them off one by one with his tail. The heroes are baffled. How is he attacking them so fast? Alicia, ever the sharp one, notices that the tail attacks are coming from their shadows. She yells at everyone to jump, literally, to break away from their shadowy doom. Her quick thinking allows her to survive a deadly strike, but the others aren't so lucky. One of the last surviving heroes slams his spear into the ground to summon an earth golem. But guess what? The land itself is under Clevitus' control. Instead of a golem, he gets a personal welcome of tail spikes erupting from the earth, slicing him to bits. The lance user makes a final desperate charge, but while he's fighting for his life, Clevitus casually wonders how such pitiful creatures even made it this far into his lair. He then finishes off the rest of the team, leaving only Alicia airborne and dodging like her life depends on it, because, well, it does. She manages to fly in close enough to land a solid blow on Clevitus' face, but even her most powerful strike barely leaves a scratch. Meanwhile, Clevitus is having a philosophical moment, wondering why the humans are bothering him at all. He hasn't messed with them in over 1,000 years, but if they're going to keep starting problems, he might just need to solve this permanently. First order of business, dealing with Alicia. He slashes her limbs off and sends her falling to her doom like a ragdoll tossed off a cliff. A short time later, Clevitus crash lands in the human kingdom, now with vengeance on his mind. He was perfectly content to leave humans alone, but apparently, King Haydn decided to poke the bear, or in this case, the moonlight-scaled murder lizard. The kingdom's archers scramble to respond and rain arrows on Clevitus, which have about as much effect as tossing paperclips at a tank. Still, they keep shooting, as if hoping peer pressure will make physics work. Clevitus, initially planning to ignore the humans, changes his mind. If they want to start a fight, so be it. He carves a bloody path through the soldiers on his way to the castle. The guards, now panicking, ready the catapults. Spoiler alert, still useless. Because you can't stop Clevitus with rocks. Clevitus rips through the castle walls like they're made of wet paper. Inside, one of the guards rushes to warn King Haydn, but the king has ears and, you know, walls collapsing tend to be loud. He already knows what's happening. The heroes he sent clearly failed. The weapons of Haydn weren't strong enough, and now Clevitus is most likely coming straight for him. Still, King Haydn doesn't bother running. He knows it's pointless. Even if he flees, Clevitus would just track him down like a vengeful bloodhound. But before he dies, the king wants to seal off the sacred forge of Haydn, so the flames that power their legendary weapons never go out. Meanwhile, outside the castle, Clevitus wonders why the humans here are such pushovers compared to the ones who attacked his den. At first, he thought maybe they were specially trained elites. But when the castle guards launch their fancy metal ballistas at him, and they barely tickle, he realizes the real strength of the first group was in their weapons. He remembers how Alicia's sword actually managed to scratch his horn, something that shouldn't even be possible. He admits, even if humans are just bugs, a bug with a stinger can still be annoying. So now he's determined to get to the bottom of this. Deep within the castle, King Haydn arrives at the Forge of Haydn, only to feel the ground shake violently. Clevitus must be close. Panicked but resolute, the king seals the forge. Moments later, the roof is ripped clean off the building, and there he is, Clevitus, in all his scaly, moonlit glory. He spots the king and immediately calls him out. Trying to keep his dignity intact, Haydn declares that a mere beast has no right to speak to a king like that. But Clevitus shuts that down fast, telling the king to mind his tone, or he'll make all of humanity disappear. Not just Haydn, but every neighboring kingdom too. He could have killed the king already, but he's offering him one chance to explain why he sent those heroes to attack. And how does the king respond? By basically spitting in Clevitus' face. A beast like you could never understand human ambition, he sneers. Welp, wrong answer. Clevitus hears all he needs. He slices off King Haydn's head on the spot and begins forming a plan to wipe out every last human. But as he walks out of the wrecked kingdom, something stops him. He hears a baby crying beside the lifeless body of its mother, crushed under rubble. Does Clevitus feel sympathy? Absolutely not. He keeps walking. But then the mother, somehow still alive, calls out to him, begging him to save her child. Clevitus is momentarily stunned by the audacity. He reminds her he's the one who destroyed this place. He's planning to exterminate humans. Why would he save one? The mother doesn't argue. She admits the adults may have deserved this fate, but pleads that her baby did not. He's innocent. Clevitus still doesn't buy it. All humans are the same in his eyes. But, just for fun, he challenges her. Prove this child is worth saving. She knows she can't. She's dying. But she promises that if he does save the child, he'll one day discover that the baby's worth will reveal itself. She dies shortly after. And Clevitus? He walks away, only to come back. The mother's words must have gotten under his scaly skin. He picks up the baby. He's still not sure this is a good idea, but compared to his own long life, a human baby is practically a blink. For now, he'll keep it out of curiosity. In the land of Ethia, 5 humanoid races exist. The Dun, numerous and masters of architecture. The Orgites, top-tier hunters and medicine experts. The Sladens, aquatic folks who dominate in swimming and fishing. The Benti, strong barbarians who can't cooperate to save their lives. The people of Haydn, or rather formerly Haydn, who were famous for forging powerful weapons, like the legendary blades of Haydn. Beyond Ethia lies nothing but darkness, a mysterious frontier where the dark beasts dwell, and with them, the 4 dark beast lords. Clevitus is one of them. No human has ever dared cross beyond the borders. Back at his cave, Clevitus brings the baby home. To make sure nothing eats it, he growls at all the surrounding monsters like a strict babysitter with anger issues. Then, curling up beside the child, he starts to rest. But now, he has a problem. The baby reeks. Like, really reeks, covered in poop. And Clevitus, mighty lord of the moonlight, did not sign up for diaper duty. So, what's his genius solution? He tosses the baby into a pit of spiders. Yeah, seriously. The baby immediately starts screaming, which, to be fair, is a reasonable reaction. But Clevitus calmly assures him that the spiders only eat poop. It's actually a spa day, kind of. Still horrifying. He pulls the baby back up, but the crying won't stop. And Clevitus is already running low on patience. But a dark beast lord doesn't go back on his decisions. He's in this now, for real. But he knows the baby won't survive on his own. He needs a human caretaker. So, Clevitus strolls back to the pile of corpses he made earlier to see if anyone's still salvageable. And guess what? Alicia wakes up. She finds herself lying on the ground, staring at the sky. For a moment, she wonders if she's dead, until she sees Clevitus and realizes she's in his cave. Her instincts kick in and she reaches for her weapon, but Clevitus casually informs her that all the weapons and her dead friends were tossed into the ravine, because that's just how he rolls. However, Clevitus thought Alicia might be useful, so he decided to bring her back to life. Technically, she's now a glorified zombie, walking around only because of the dark energy he infused her with. But hey, details. Anyway, enough exposition. Clevitus immediately orders Alicia to do something useful. Give him some milk. She freezes for a moment, trying to process what she just heard. But unfortunately, he's not joking. And no, it's not a request either, he needs that milk. So, he uses his powers to force her to comply. After several awkward minutes of very unproductive suckling, Clevitis finally accepts the painful truth. This isn't working. Alicia, incredibly annoyed and also very confused, points out the obvious. She's never had a baby, so of course she can't produce milk. She also questions why someone like Clevitis, a literal dark beast lord, would even want to keep a human baby alive. Clevitis doesn't feel like explaining himself, nor does he owe her one. But since Alicia is a failed milk machine, he demands that she at least be useful in other ways. The baby won't die thanks to Clevitis' energy, but it will stay perpetually hungry unless it's properly fed. So he asks Alicia if there's any other way to get milk. Bound by his power, Alicia can't lie or refuse. So she tells him the most obvious option: hire a nursing mother. But that would mean going to a human town, and with his current form, Clevitis would spark a panic or a riot or both. So, time for a makeover. With nothing else to work with, he shapeshifts into the form of the baby's deceased mother and introduces himself as Kren. As for the baby, her name will be Luna. Kren orders Alicia to lead the way to the nearest village. But before that, she needs to wash Luna's blanket. While scrubbing it clean, she notices something troubling. It bears the Haiden royal crest. Meanwhile, back in what's left of Haiden, word has spread about the kingdom's sudden destruction. A scout is sent to inspect the aftermath. Upon arrival, he's stunned. This level of destruction was caused by a single dark beast? This is why he was against attacking a beast lord in the first place. To make things worse, the assault happened on the very same day the crown princess was supposed to flee the kingdom with her son. Back by the river, Alicia confronts Kren and asks if he knew that Luna was from the royal family. Kren is clueless, so she points out the blanket's crest. Only royalty is allowed to use it. Thinking back, Kren realizes he found the baby buried under rubble near the castle. It would make sense that the child is royalty, but this doesn't change his plans. Alicia then asks what he means by rubble of the castle, and Kren, in classic deadpan fashion, bluntly replies, "I destroyed Haiden and killed the king last night." Alicia is stunned. Haiden really is gone? Kren shrugs it off. After all, they attacked him first. But Alicia points out that it is a big deal. If Luna really is the last royal, then people from all over the continent are going to be hunting him down. Kren doesn't get it. Why would that matter? So Alicia explains, only members of the Haiden royal family know the sacred forging techniques needed to craft their legendary weapons. Immediately after saying that, she realizes she said too much. Kren, who hadn't really thought long-term yet, suddenly gets an idea. If Luna is that important, maybe he should just make the kid the new king of humanity. That way, Kren could rule everything from the shadows and crush humanity the moment they step out of line. But first, milk. He tells Alicia to stop standing around and get moving. Alicia still doesn't understand why Kren is so attached to Luna, but one thing is clear. If anything happens to this baby, Kren will probably obliterate every last human on the continent. So, whether she likes it or not, Alicia must protect this child at any cost. Now we see that Alicia and Klen both are captured, and suddenly Alicia awake, and she's seen Klen in front of her, and she was very calm and tell Alicia that Luna is safe, and she doesn't have to worry about her. Now Alicia go closer to Klen and asked how only one hit was enough to down you. Don't tell me that you are now weaker like human, because you just transformed into one. Then Klen says, of course not, even I was shocked, and this body is weaker than I thought. Right now I am just a human, and I will have to hide my identity until Luna becomes the king. Then Alicia says we have been attacked by filthy bandits, and we are being taken to slavery, and these bandits are stronger than normal humans. They can as dirty as for themselves and cross any cruelty. In the next scene, we see that they reach the place, and bandits ask men and old people to go one side and women and child to another. But suddenly of the men try to escape, and then one of the bandits kill him with the knife. One of the bandits steps forward and declares, "We're ravens, and if anyone else tries to run, they'll die just like him." Fear spreads among the captives like wildfire. Then, one of the thugs roughly grabs Alicia and drags her away. The scene cuts to a peaceful village, where a woman named Carmi spots Clean carrying a baby girl. Surprised, she invites him into her home and offers him a place to stay. She then calls for her maid, Neil, saying she's good with little ones around here. That evening, we shift to the boss's room, Roku's chamber. A guard enters, dragging Alicia in, and foolishly calls him by name. Instantly, Roku's expression darkens. He slams his fist on the table and growls. Don't you ever call me that. You address me as boss. Got it? President Roku, now Zazak. The old boss vanished and I took his place. Keep calling me by name and you won't just lose your job, you'll meet Beastie. Q. A terrifying creature known as Beastie, a monstrous dark beast from the west, steps forward. Alicia stares in disbelief. Why would someone like Roku keep such a terrifying creature as a pet? Then Roku pulls out a small pouch filled with glowing red stones and steps closer. You brought these from Luna Mountain, didn't you? He asks with suspicion. That's the den of Clevitus, one of the 4 great dark beast lords. His tone sharpens. They say the king of Haydn sent 13 heroes there, armed with sacred treasures. None of them returned. One of them was a woman. You expect me to believe it's just a coincidence you brought back stones as pure, something impossible to find in human lands. He leans in, eyes narrowed. Tell me, were you one of those 13 soldiers? Then he drops another bombshell. Did you hear? Clevitus attacked Hydrat and wiped out their entire castle. He draws a glowing red sword, causing Alicia to gasp. That sword, she exclaims. She recognizes it immediately. Only Haydn's royal family can forge such a weapon, the red glow proof of its purity and immense power. These swords are said to amplify a fighter's strength manifold. But Roku smirks. Oh, this thing? It's fake. We don't just sell slaves, we sell counterfeit weapons too. Most people are too dumb to know the difference. He adds, there are only 2 ways to get a sacred treasure. Either be chosen as a hero by the king, or looted off a dead one. And let's be honest, most heroes die anyway. Then Roku stares coldly into Alicia's eyes. So, where's your sacred treasure? And where are the other 12? Alicia clenches her fists and remains silent. His grin fades. Make her talk, he orders his guards. Tomorrow, she's leading us to it. She's the key to finding all 13. The guards drag her away. Later, we see Clean working undercover in the local tavern, serving food and drinks. The customers mock him, laughing at his pale and fragile appearance. Nearby, Carmi whispers to a friend, that boy's strange. I thought he had orc blood because of that horn on his head, but he's way too weak. He's practically see-through. Meanwhile, Neil is carrying drinks when one of the guards deliberately trips her, sending her crashing to the ground. They drag her outside, claiming they'll teach her a lesson and beat her mercilessly before tossing her into the dirt. Suddenly, Clean appears, eyes cold and deadly. In a flash, he kills both guards and disposes of their bodies without anyone noticing. Neil, trembling with fear and confusion, stares at him. But Clean gently says, "Take care of the baby. I'd like to talk to you." Later, they sit under the moonlight. Neil timidly opens up. "I've been here with the ravens since I was born. I never knew my father. My mother was here too, but I only ever saw her from behind. I don't even remember her face." Her voice cracks. She was a slave too. Neil spoke quietly. They used to beat my mother constantly, and then one day, she just disappeared. I don't know if she escaped or died. After that, they started beating me instead. She lifted her hair, revealing scars on her ears and a mouth missing teeth. I lost most of my teeth. I can only hear from one ear now, she added, her voice steady but numb from years of pain. It wasn't until later that I realized my mother had been protecting me all along. Her words hit hard. They've always treated us like animals, she continued. Things only got a little better after Carmi arrived. She taught me how to deal with the men around here. Life isn't as awful as it used to be. At least now I have a job taking care of the children. Clean looked at her carefully and asked, "If you know how to care for children, where's your own?" Neil's expression darkened. "I gave birth to a stillborn," she whispered, her voice finally cracking. "When I realized my baby was gone, it was like my whole world went dark. I felt like I was sinking, falling deeper and deeper, wishing I could just die too." She wiped away a tear, forcing a small broken smile. "But then, when I started caring for the children here, I thought maybe I was meant to protect little ones like them. Sometimes I even imagine they're mine." Clean remained silent, his gaze softening. Then he asked gently, "Would you come with me? I need someone I can trust to take care of Luna, and she seems to like you too." A reflective thought lingers. If you were Clean, could you stay calm in a moment like this? And if you were Neil, would you have survived such a life? Sometimes the weakest people carry the strongest hearts. Neil stared at him, surprised. She hadn't expected that kind of offer. But Clean looked serious, calm and firm. Take your time. Think carefully, he said, locking eyes with her, but I want your answer. Will you come with me? Be Luna's nursemaid and leave this place? Or stay here, serving slave owners who everyone says are nothing more than scum? Neil lowered her eyes. Her lips quivered as she sighed. Honestly, I'm really grateful for your offer, she said softly. But in the end, you're a slave too. You won't be able to pay me much. She gave him a sad smile. So, I'll stay. I need to care for the children who come next. I'm sorry. She gently handed the baby back to him and walked away without looking back. At this point, you can't help but ask yourself, what would you do in her shoes? Stay in familiar suffering or risk everything for a shot at freedom? Meanwhile, we see Alicia, the heroine, being forced to cross a narrow bridge surrounded by thugs and bandits. She halts, lost in thought. One of the bandits taps her with his sword and sneers, "Keep moving, or are you thinking about jumping?" He chuckles darkly, "Don't bother. The walls here slope inward. You'll smash into the rocks long before you reach the lake below." Suddenly, the group's attention shifts to a nearby man, clearly out of his mind, who loudly challenges the lake itself. He claims he'll dive beneath the water and reach a hidden magic mine just 2 meters below the surface. It's an absurdly dangerous stunt. Everyone starts mocking him. What an idiot, they shout. He's really gonna try it. Off to the side, his wife watches nervously, calling out, "Do your best, darling," hopeful but pale. Without hesitation, the man dives in. Alicia gasps. He's insane. The whole entrance is submerged and crawling with monsters. He's not coming back. Sure enough, within moments, a monstrous beast rises from the depths and devours the man instantly. Then it lunges upward, dragging another poor soul with it. Yes, folks, the narrator might say ominously, these are the dreaded dark beasts, Arventus, still lurking in these waters. They've haunted this area ever since the Great Floods 300 years ago. That mine, abandoned. Even Kotour, the greatest hero of his time, failed to defeat these monsters. At least back then, there was ground to stand on. Kotour's legendary weapon, the Stream Cutter, earned its name after slicing through a waterfall in front of King Haydn himself. One of the bandits, stunned, turns to Alicia. "I didn't know swords had names. Does yours have one too?" She glares at him and snaps. "There's no reason I need to tell you anything." But the bandit sneers. "You fool. You promised them freedom, didn't you? Yet here you are, tying ropes around your slave and dragging him like a dog. Doesn't that mean you never meant to set him free?" His voice is full of venom. "I know what scum like you think. You're just like those Zionists, making promises you'll never keep." Alicia glares at him but stays silent. Another bandit snickers. "Stay out of other people's messes, girl. You've got your own to worry about," he taunts. "You're shackled at the wrists, iron balls chained to your ankles, standing on a bridge to nowhere. And on the other side, even more people waiting to hurt you." The whole crowd erupts in laughter, eager to watch the heroine break. Oh yeah, one grins. "Can't wait to hear Miss Heroine squeal like a pig." Suddenly, a deranged-looking thug leaps in front of Alicia, shaking the bridge violently. The others scream, "Hey, idiot, you'll break the bridge!" But the maniac only laughs. "I don't care," he shouts. "All I see is a woman I want to strip and defile in front of everyone." His words ignite a storm of fury in Alicia. Her eyes blaze. She violently struggles against her restraints, and then, with a sudden burst of strength, she breaks partially free. With one fierce blow, she smashes the pervert so hard, the ropes holding the bridge snap. Both Alicia and the thug plummet into the abyss below, bodies vanishing into the darkness. And just like that, silence. 2 corpses falling into the unknown. The bandits look down and, upon seeing Alicia's body, they start panicking. She was supposed to lead them to the 13 regalia that were lost. Meanwhile, at the bottom of the cave, Alicia regains consciousness thanks to the curse of immortality that Clevitus placed on her. Sure, she can't die, but the curse doesn't grant regeneration either. Right now, she's paralyzed from the neck down, every bone shattered and her blood rapidly draining. She has no clue how to escape. Worse, if the bandits realize she's alive, things could get ugly. As she struggles to move, the blood pooling from her wounds begins floating. Then Clevitus materializes from it in a tiny form. Alicia is shocked to see him so small, but he explains he's manifesting using the blood magic in her body. That same blood magic is what's keeping her alive. If she bleeds out entirely, permanent death. However, Clevitus promises that as long as she's useful, he'll replace her blood and heal her. But he hasn't started yet, which Alicia notices, so she impatiently asks why. He says he'll heal her, sure, but first, he wants her opinion on something. Apparently, he recently offered Nu, the wet nurse candidate for Luna, a chance to escape this wretched place and live a better life. But surprisingly, Nu rejected him flat out. Clevitus wonders if Alicia knows why. She figures it's because Nu sees Clevitus as a powerless slave, incapable of keeping promises. Bandit groups like this don't just let people leave, and escapees are always hunted down. Being born and raised in this camp, Nu probably thinks freedom is a hopeless dream. Clevitus asks if there's a solution. Alicia bluntly suggests, just kill all the bandits. If no one's left to chase her, Nu might actually believe she can be free. She adds that with his power, Clevitus could easily wipe out the camp. But Clevitus refuses. If word got out that he left the mountain, enemies might take advantage and invade his territory. Instead, he wants Alicia to handle it. After all, it's normal for a hero to slay bandits. Alicia tries to protest, but Clevitus shuts her up and forcefully pumps her full of blood, regenerating her body. When the bandits finally reach her, they're horrified watching her bones snap back and tissues reattach. The agony is unbearable, but soon she's back to full health. They can't believe she survived the fall, but figure it doesn't matter. As long as she's alive, they can force her to lead them to the 13 regalia. One cocky bandit charges alone and slashes her shoulder, but after what she just endured, it's nothing. She grabs his arm, punches his face in, then snatches his sword and eye patch. Alicia still hates being forced to fight, but these scumbags need to go down. While Alicia handles the bandits, Clevitus focuses on finding Nu and convincing her that escape is possible. Meanwhile, Nu returns to the tavern, where Carmi, correct name for Carmi, is worried about her bruises. Carmi hates seeing Nu beaten, but can't stop the bandits. Still, she asks Nu to start clearing dishes. Noticing Nu is in an oddly good mood despite the abuse, Carmi asks what's up. Nu admits it's not good news exactly, but it made her happy. She asks Carmi what the outside world is like. Carmi is surprised. Nu never asked that before. She explains she was born here and never saw the world, while Carmi was brought here after her home was destroyed, so her memories of the outside aren't happy ones. When Carmi asks why the sudden curiosity, Nu reveals someone asked her if she wanted to leave. Alarmed, Carmi slaps Nu. You can't say things like that aloud with bandits nearby. They see slaves as disposable. The women here only survive by watching each other's backs. Just then, Blocko, correct spelling, walks in, having heard everything. Carmi grows nervous, asking why he's here since he rarely visits. Blocko says he heard a baby was brought in and wanted to check. He asks Nu where the baby is, and she says Luna is in the stables. As he turns to leave, he tells Nu to come with him. From his tone, Carmi can tell this isn't good, but she has no power to stop it. Meanwhile, Nu remains clueless about the terrible fate that might await her. Once Brokov takes Nu away, Carmi slams her hands on the table in frustration. Nu was the only one capable of taking care of the babies here, and now she's gone. But Brokov couldn't care less. Carmi tries to convince herself that there was nothing she could have done, and that Nu brought this on herself by talking about escape in front of Brokov. Yet, the guilt of what's about to happen to Nu weighs heavily on her. At that moment, Clevitus appears, carrying Luna. Carmi is startled. She didn't even hear him come in, but quickly realizes he's probably here because he wants to feed Luna. Regretfully, she informs him that Nu is gone and likely won't return. Carmi dislikes it, but that's just how things work here. However, Clevitus doesn't accept that. His piercing gaze tells Carmi he's dead serious about ensuring Nu's safety, and he demands an explanation. Meanwhile, Brokov leads Nu down an old stairwell. Nu is amazed. Despite living her entire life in the camp, she's never seen this place before. Brokov explains that it was once part of a massive magic ore mine. Magic ores have countless uses. For example, the lamp Brokov carries works because of crushed magic ores mixed with insect oil. Before becoming a bandit, Brokov spent a lot of time researching the applications of magic ores, particularly how to mix them with various liquids to produce unique effects. He casually tells Nu to ignore the skulls on the floor. They're nothing to worry about. Then, Brokov turns off the lamp, plunging them into darkness. Nu panics, pleading for the light to be turned back on. When Brokov complies, she's horrified to see his pet monster Betty standing right behind her. As part of his experiments, Brokov developed mixtures that allow him to control demons like Betty, which helped him become the leader of the bandits. As the leader, Brokov says he can't let someone live after expressing a desire to escape, so Nu will be executed by Betty. Panicking, Nu tries to flee, but Brokov commands Betty to eat her. As she runs, Nu thinks back to Clevitus' offer and deeply regrets not accepting it. Suddenly, she sees Clevitis holding Luna at the tunnel's other end. Her last thought is sorrow for not being able to care for Luna anymore. Normally, this is where the hero would save her, but not this time. Nu is devoured by Betty, swallowed whole. Luna starts crying at the horrific sight, but Clevitis remarks coldly that this is just how the world works. Magic beasts need to eat, and it's his own fault for arriving too late. He's disappointed to lose such a useful woman, but resigns himself to the loss. Turning to Brakov, Clevitis finds it strange that a proud troll from the western forest, like Betty, would obey someone like Brakov. Brakov scoffs, thinking Clevitis is crazy for insulting him here, and orders Betty to eat Clevitis next. But to his shock, Betty refuses to move. She looks terrified, paralyzed with fear. She even vomits up Nu, though she's covered in stomach acid and missing an arm and leg. Yet, she's still alive. Clevitis neutralizes the acid with his powers and gently sets Luna down next to Nu, comforting her in her final moments. Then, using his shadow, Clevitis discreetly carries both Luna and Nu away. By the time Brakov looks back, they're gone. He assumes Clevitis used magic to escape, though Clevitis himself is clueless about magic. Brakov accuses him of feigning ignorance, believing magic is the only explanation for his feats. He explains that magic combines magic stones, herbs, and special ingredients to produce effects. For instance, he shows a drug in his coat, crafted from magic stones, herbs, and parasitic fly larvae. It makes anyone but him dumb as a rock. Using it on Betty, she became fully obedient. Brakov pours the drug into his fire, creating vapors. As soon as Betty inhales them, she loses all reason and charges at Clevitis in a blind rage. Clevitis is tossed around helplessly. In his human form, his power is limited. While flying through the air, all he can think about is how mad he is that Alicia never mentioned magic to him. Meanwhile, Alicia continues cutting down bandits. She's already killed 8, but many remain, and her stolen sword is broken. She knows she'll need a better weapon to win. She runs toward the flooded cave. About 50 bandits are left. Though immortal, she can still tire, so if exhaustion hits before the bandits are dead, she's done for. Reaching the water, she sees the lake monsters already waiting. Jumping in would be suicide, so she climbs the scaffolding instead, tricking the bandits into following her up. Once enough of them climb, she cuts the support rope, collapsing the structure and sending most of them into the water. The monsters enter a frenzy, devouring the bandits. During the chaos, Alicia hides inside a barrel and sinks to the lake bottom. Since she doesn't need to breathe, she waits patiently, hoping to reach the legendary sword hidden below. While the monsters were devouring the bandits, Alicia was having a rough time descending to the bottom of the lake. The water pressure increased the deeper she went, and being unable to breathe wasn't exactly helping her mood. Still, she pressed on because, hey, she knew she couldn't die anyway. Her real enemy was her own weak body. After a tough struggle, she finally reached the bottom and spotted something glowing. It was the sword. She swam toward it, but just as she reached it, the biggest, meanest monster of them all appeared out of nowhere. Alicia was stunned. How could something that huge stay hidden down here for so long? But there wasn't time for awe. The monster grabbed her and yanked her toward its gaping mouth while she desperately tried to reach for the sword. Just in time, she managed to grab it while practically lodged between the monster's teeth. She remembered what her father once told her, that her hands might be weaker than a man's, but she was far better at drawing out a sword's true power. Channeling that strength, she slashed her way free and unleashed the sword's energy. Guided by the legendary sword techniques passed down in stories, Alicia started moving freely underwater like she was born there. She realized then that the sword grew stronger in the right environment, and it finally clicked. This was the same creature that likely defeated the hero known as the Current Cutter. No one could have imagined a beast like this existed. It had to be one of those ancient monsters from legends, immortal creatures that rarely appear and live for thousands of years. While trying to escape, Alicia caught the attention of other monsters. But all she cared about now was oxygen. Slashing through anything in her way, she reached the surface, gasping for breath. The remaining bandits were stunned. There she was, emerging from the water, wielding the sacred sword. But before they could cheer, the enormous monster burst from the lake and went full rampage mode, killing everything in sight. Alicia tried escaping, but couldn't do much. She attempted to attack the monster's limbs, but it was useless. To kill it, she'd need to chop its legs off, and she couldn't even reach those. It became obvious, no single hero could take on an ancient beast like this. So, she made the logical choice. She retreated. The bandits begged for her help, but she coldly left them to their doom. The monsters made quick work of them. From a safe distance, Alicia watched it all go down. The monsters weren't leaving the lake, and that meant her mission was technically complete. Clevitis had only asked her to eliminate the bandits. Plus, she now had the sword. So win? Just then, Clevitis started speaking to Alicia through the essence of darkness. He knew she'd completed the mission. Even though he hadn't seen it, he could somehow feel it. Clearly, it had been rough. Alicia, not in the mood for compliments, snapped back that rough didn't even begin to describe it. It was destructive. She demanded to know why he didn't help if he knew how bad it would be. Clevitis replied that he had a problem. Alicia was baffled, a lord of darkness with problems. He explained that part of it was his limited human form. The other part? He'd been dealing with this whole thing called magic, something completely new to him, and it was seriously messing with his senses. Why didn't you tell me about magic, Alicia? He said ominously, come to me now so I can punish you. Meanwhile, Brakov, yes, he survived somehow, was limping away, wondering how all of this happened and who the heck that terrifying kid was. Haunted by the memory of facing Clevitis, he eventually collapsed from the stress, unable to even comprehend the power he'd witnessed. Still, he kept crawling until he saw Luna and knew up ahead. By now, Alicia had reached Clevitis. He greeted her with his usual sass. You're late. She snapped back that she came as fast as she could, like she even had a choice. But then she noticed the smoke, and she was stunned. So, Clevitis asked Alicia about the sword. She told him flat out that she wasn't handing it over. After all, she basically paid with her life to get it. Surprisingly, Clevitis didn't care about the sword. Instead, he asked about the strange magic in the area. It wasn't affecting animals, just him, and it was incredibly effective against dark monsters. He couldn't even smell properly, and both his ears were ringing like crazy. He mentioned he could avoid all of this by transforming into his true form, but doing so would likely destroy the cave and possibly kill Luna, who had only just gone missing. That risk wasn't worth it. Hearing this, Alicia was shocked, realizing that anything happening to Luna could trigger a massive disaster. Clevitis then told her she needed to do something about the magic. Alicia explained that she didn't know how to use magic because, well, hardly anyone did. Magic was rare, and only a few chosen ones could wield it. To even begin using magic, one needed a monohydrite metal, something ordinary people had a 0% chance of obtaining. Upon hearing that, Clevitis casually called her useless. Naturally, that didn't sit well with Alicia. She pointed out that some of the heroes she'd killed could use magic, but Clevitis ignored her and simply kept walking. Alicia insisted they needed to find Luna, even though the chances were high she was already dead. She asked what would happen if Luna really was dead. Clevitis answered coldly, if Luna dies, my interest in humanity dies with her. That's when Alicia realized Clevitis had already considered destroying the entire world. The only thing stopping him was Luna. So now Alicia had one mission: find Luna alive. She was everyone's last hope. As they moved forward, Alicia noticed bloodstains and asked if Neil was injured. Clevitis said Neil wasn't even in a condition to crawl, meaning someone must have dragged her away. Elsewhere, we see Frocco moving ahead, but Neil, stubborn as ever, kept tripping him up, so Frocco started kicking her. Even then, Neil wouldn't let go of his coat. He was furious. That coat was a rare, one-of-a-kind item made from black feathers. Still, his mission to get Luna out of there came first. Frocco remembered that when he tried to touch Luna, she suddenly burst into tears, causing the lantern in his hand to explode. That's when it hit him. This child had magical power. Not just that, he had pure royal blood. He had to be the lost prince of the Hidden Kingdom. Suddenly, Alicia appeared. Frocco was stunned to see her. He asked where his men were. From behind, Clevitis calmly told him they are all currently being digested inside the dark monster's stomach. Clevitis looked at Neil and said, looks like you fought right to your last breath. At that, Frocco made a threat. If anyone moved even a step, he'd start cutting off Luna's fingers. Clevitis, not even slightly fazed, said, do what you want. Alicia, however, stepped in, saying, let me handle this. This guy will actually cut her fingers off. Even if we can heal them, the pain and trauma won't just vanish. Then she made Frocco an offer. She revealed the legendary sword. Frocco was stunned. Without warning, Alicia threw the sword into the wall and said, you can't pull that out with one hand. So let's make a deal. Leave the kid, take the sword, and walk away. But if you try anything funny, I'll kill you myself. Frocco laughed, saying, if you're giving up the legendary sword that easily, then this kid must be worth even more than the sword. His suspicion confirmed, Alicia was furious. Then Frocko started asking where the rest of the legendary swords were. After all, 1 for 1 wasn't a fair deal. On Clevitus's orders, Alicia revealed the location. The rest of the weapons were at the bottom of Grand Valley. Immediately after learning that, Frocko pulled out an invisibility potion and used it on himself. Alicia was caught off guard. Frocko then struck Luna on the head, making her cry harder to fuel his magic, and both vanished. Still talking, despite being invisible, Frocko gloated about getting revenge. But suddenly, Alicia dropped down and sliced him in half. "How did you know where I was?" he gasped. "You idiot," she said. "Stop talking so much. We could hear you moving." At the same time, Luna's cries rang out again. She reappeared next to Clevitus, who wiped off the magic powder from her to dispel the invisibility. Then Alicia brought up Neil, who was barely alive. She asked Clevitus if he was going to save her. After all, even in that awful condition, Neil had done so much for Luna. Without her, Luna would never have been saved. Getting emotional, Alicia pleaded. Clevitus agreed, but told her he would need to use the dark fluid from Alicia's body to heal Neil, and that meant Alicia would have to die. Again, Alicia accepted without hesitation. It wasn't her first time. While Clevitus drained her blood from the inside, Alicia died once more. But now, Neil's body was fully healed, and even her appearance had changed. Clevitus told her that Alicia had made the sacrifice to save her, and that she herself had been saved from the monster. "Don't worry," he said. "Alicia will definitely come back." For the first time, Clevitus actually praised Alicia, admitting she was stronger than other humans. Sure enough, Alicia came back to life again. First thing she did, she looked for her sword, her most prized possession now. Then, Clevitus handed Luna to Neil, now fully recovered, and said it was feeding time. Oh, and also he renamed Neil to Neller, which left her completely stunned. "You're a new person now," Clevitus told her, "so you need a new name. Will you join us?" She responded happily. The next morning, Clevitus confiscates Alicia's sword, leaving her devastated. But he assures her that having it out would draw too much attention, so he's just storing it in his shadow until it's actually needed. Meanwhile, Neller has finished packing a bunch of the bandits' gear for the next leg of their journey, and she even found some nice clothes for Luna to wear. Alicia asks if she's seriously carrying all that luggage on her own because it looks ridiculously heavy, but Neller says it actually feels pretty light. That's when Alicia remembers. Neller lost a huge portion of her body when she nearly died yesterday. So clearly, Clevitus must have replaced her missing parts with something that somehow made her stronger. What exactly he did, though, is still a mystery to her. Neller approaches Alicia and kindly offers to carry her sword for her. But Alicia admits she doesn't actually have her sword anymore. So Neller tells her that she remembers hearing something about Frocko keeping a bunch of cool swords in his desk. Alicia lights up with excitement and immediately begs Clevitus to at least let her have one regular sword. Knowing that Alicia is basically useless in battle without a blade, Clevitus gives her the green light. She dashes off to raid Frocko's desk. With Frocko and the rest of the bandits dead, and all the slaves having already escaped, the place is basically a ghost town now. Clevitus asks Neller if she's going to miss this place. But she says no, she's had nothing but awful memories here. If anything, she only wishes she could have said goodbye to Carm before leaving. Hearing her say that, Clevitus realizes he might have made a mistake earlier. But before he can say anything about it, he's suddenly ambushed from above. At the same time, Alicia kicks down the door to Frocko's office and begins rummaging through the desk. She finds some money, a set of leather armor, and a decent sword. Satisfied, she turns to head back, only to have Clevitus come crashing through the wall, slamming into the desk. "I still haven't gotten used to how easily this human body gets ragdolled," he groans. Before he can explain, a new threat enters, Gart, stepping through the massive hole in the wall. One look, and Alicia can tell this guy is strong. She draws her sword, ready to fight. In the blink of an eye, Gart launches a kick so powerful that the air pressure alone cuts Alicia across the face. He's impressed she dodged at all, but he doubts she can hold out for long. He starts hitting her with a barrage of kicks until she finally loses her footing. Then Gart jumps back and unleashes a tornado of wind, launching Alicia through the roof. She crash lands outside, battered but still standing, much to Gart's surprise. Impressed, he makes her an offer. He's only interested in Clevitis, so if she puts her sword down and leaves, he won't fight her anymore. But Alicia doesn't buy it. She assumes he must be one of the surviving bandits. Right now, she really wishes she had the stream splitter sword. Since she doesn't, she falls back on a technique she learned from King Haydn. She clears her mind of all distractions. The only thing left in her head? Running the fade with Gart. Her sudden burst of speed catches Gart off guard, and just as her sword is about to make contact, Clevitis shouts for her to stop. Her body obeys instinctively, but her mind is still dead set on murder, so Clevitis has to literally knock some sense into her. Once Alicia calms down, Clevitis explains the truth. This was all one big misunderstanding. There's no need for a fight. Besides, if he hadn't stopped her just now, Gart would have straight up obliterated her with his next kick before she could land a hit. Gart is a pretty reasonable guy, so he asks Clevitis to explain exactly what he meant by this as a misunderstanding. Because no matter how you spin it, Neller over there smells suspiciously like a Western troll, and Gart had been told that a troll was being controlled in this camp before he even arrived. He's already explored the caverns beneath the camp and found the troll's corpse, except several parts were missing, like someone had intentionally harvested them. Gart's current theory, that Clevitis is the camp leader who killed the troll for fun. But, of course, that's not even close to the truth. Clevitis calmly tells Neller to take Luna and wait by the front gate, saying he needs to speak with Gart alone. Once they're gone, he quietly informs Alicia that Gart is actually a dark beast in disguise. This stuns her. She had no idea other dark beasts could transform into humans like Clevitis can. But Clevitis clarifies, Gart is under a powerful illusion. As far as he knows, there's only one being who can pull off illusion magic that convincing, none other than the Dark Beast Lord of the West, Zathir. And just for the record, Clevitis doesn't get along with Zathir at all and would prefer to avoid crossing paths. Gart, surprised by how much Clevitis has deduced in such a short time, asks him directly who he really is. Not ready to reveal his true identity, Clevitis lies and claims he's just a servant of the Dark Beast Lord Clevitis. Yes, a little ironic. Gart buys it and cancels the illusion magic, revealing his true form, a bird monster serving under Zathir. Now that he's out in the open, Gart wants proof that Clevitis is also a dark beast. In response, Clevitis summons one of his shadow tails, which is enough to convince him, so Gart proposes a truce. Meanwhile, Alicia is mentally spiraling. First, she finds out there are other beasts who can shapeshift and speak fluent human like Clevitis. So what was even the point of the heroes fighting Clevitis back then? Clevitis notices her distress and reassures her. She doesn't need to worry, since very few dark beasts can disguise themselves as humans. And aside from Zathir, most wouldn't bother interacting with humans unless there's a really good reason. With that cleared up, Gart wants to know something else. Why is Clevitis willingly traveling with a human woman? Clevitis explains that Alicia is a human he turned into his servant. She's now bound to obey his every command, and he's keeping her around as a guide to help him understand the human world. Same goes for Neller and Luna, though he's not planning to tell Gart anything more than that. Gart accepts the explanation, but makes one thing crystal clear. If Clevitis interferes with his mission, he will kill him. Clevitis, unfazed, replies that he's welcome to try, but it won't be easy. With that tension diffused, for now, Clevitis decides it's his turn to ask a question. Earlier, Gart had mentioned something about Zathir considering wiping out all of humanity. That struck Clevitis as strange, because last he heard, Zathir actually enjoyed watching humans and was even worshipped as a god by the Orgites in the West. So what changed? Gart agrees to explain. 3 days ago, he discovered several dark beast families had lost their children. That alone wouldn't have been alarming, but he also found a vial at the scene, which made him suspect human involvement. He reported the situation to Zathir, along with 9 similar incidents he had found. Zathir agreed that the humans were likely behind the disappearances. Although she was surprised they betray her like this, especially after how well she had treated them, she tasked Gart with investigating. If it turns out that humans are kidnapping the children of dark beasts in the forest, she plans to wipe them all out. Hearing that, Clevitis starts putting pieces together. Last night, while interrogating Carm, she told him that all children born in the camp are sold to a mysterious group of men because of their talent. That was Fracco's plan for Luna too. Clevitis now suspects that the kidnapped dark beast children and the human kids being sold off might be connected. He recalls that Carm mentioned a talent, and he's pretty sure that talent involves magic. When Alicia hears the word magic, her expression sours. Clevitis picks picks up on it and asks if she knows anything. She says magic still isn't her area of expertise, but kidnapping children for their magical potential. That absolutely sounds like something the wizards would do. Those are the people who've been changing the face of warfare in human kingdoms over the past few years. Right now, the outcome of battles depends almost entirely on the skills of the wizards each side has, as a single wizard is capable of wiping out dozens, if not hundreds, of soldiers with a single spell. Granted, wizards are also vulnerable to attacks from other wizards, so they're not unstoppable, but they remain a devastating force on the battlefield. The first person to introduce wizards into warfare was General Drell, also known as the Dragon Slayer. He's the same man who killed Alicia's father when she was a child, so she has held a deep grudge against him for years. Clevitus finds that story interesting but questions why Alicia wasted her time coming after him instead of targeting the man who actually killed her father. After all, Clevitus had never harmed humans until they attacked first. Alicia explains that it was her father's dying wish, so she put aside her personal feelings and committed herself to the mission to push forward through Clevitus's territory. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the human kingdom, General Drell is leading an army of 50,000 men southward. His objective is to capture the ruins of Haydn and claim them for himself. The remnants of the Haydn army, however, number only around 6,000 men, and they have very few wizards left. There's no way they could stop him in a head-on confrontation. Miguel asks if reinforcements are on their way, but given the current state of communication and travel, it'll take at least 3 days for help to arrive. For now, they're on their own. The commander has a last-ditch plan to give them a fighting chance. If they can reach the fortress at Highgate and seal it from within, they might be able to hold off Drell's forces despite being vastly outnumbered. However, this strategy depends on cooperation from the soldiers already inside the fortress. Although the commander sent them a letter explaining the situation, he's received no response. He assumes things must be chaotic inside as well. At this point, the commander and Miguel are still unsure whether the rumors of Clevitus destroying Haydn are true. But since Bolate was bold enough to send General Drell to conquer the region, he suspects the worst, that Haydn has indeed fallen. If he had to guess, Drell is after Haydn's forge because without it, no one can produce magical weapons. Miguel agrees it would be disastrous if the Bolates managed to get their hands on the forge and began manufacturing magical arms. But the threat goes beyond simple weapons. The Royal Forge of Haydn is one of the oldest magical artifacts in existence. If the magic-obsessed Bolates were to obtain it, there's no telling what secrets they might uncover. With that kind of power, they could potentially take over the entire continent. That's why the commander insists they must be stopped at all costs. At the same time, General Drell meets with the most powerful wizard under his command, Maynard. Maynard informs him that he has confirmed Haydn was indeed destroyed by Clevitus, and all members of the royal family have been killed, except for the 6-month-old crown prince. He's the only surviving member of royal blood, but his current whereabouts are unknown. Maynard can't say for sure whether the child is alive or dead. However, in other news, he recently received a report from a group of bandits who claim to have found a baby matching the prince's description. Maynard believes it's worth investigating, and General Drell gives him full authority to do whatever it takes to locate the child and bring him in. Clen and the others have just arrived in a nearby town. While they wait for Alicia to gather information, Nell makes Clen a cup of coffee. He's never heard of coffee before, so he asks Nell what it is, but she's not entirely sure either. It's just some expensive drink that Verko used to have her make for him from time to time. So, she grabs some beans on their way out, figuring Clen might like it. Clen decides to give the mystery bean soup a try. After letting it cool, he takes a sip and hey, turns out it actually tastes amazing. Nell is happy he enjoys it, but there's something she's been meaning to ask. What happened to that strange man who attacked Clen back at the camp? He kind of just vanished, and it's a little weird. After learning about wizards and magic from Alicia, Gart had told Clen that he'd be leaving to report back to his master, so they won't be seeing him for a while. Still, Clen assures Nell that even if they do run into him again, he's no longer suspicious of them and won't attack. Just then, Alicia comes running up the hill with bad news. According to the village, the situation in Haydn is a complete disaster. The neighboring country of Bolate has broken past the border and invaded. Haydn is trying to fight back, but with the king dead and the capital in ruins, they don't stand a chance. Apparently, the country of Ezen tried to slow down Bolade's advance, but it didn't do much in the end. Clen asks why Ezen would even bother helping Haydn when they aren't directly involved in the conflict. Alicia explains that Ezen has been at war with the Bolates for ages, but they're currently weaker. They don't want the Bolates getting their hands on the Haydn Forge, a powerful artifact that could make them unstoppable. Of course, even if they got the forge, it would be useless without someone of royal blood to activate it. The real problem is that Haydn is hopelessly outmatched, especially since Clen killed their king, and they don't have any sorcerers left. At this rate, Haydn might just disappear from the map. That sounds awful, but Clen doesn't really care. His only goal is to make Luna king. Whether Bolate takes over Haydn or not doesn't matter to him. But Alicia argues otherwise. If Haydn falls under Bolate rule, Luna will never be allowed to be king. Only Bolate-born citizens are eligible, and from Luna's appearance, it's painfully obvious he's a pure-blooded Hittite. Under Bolate rule, that would make Luna an outcast. Worse still, pure-blooded Hittites are extremely rare and highly valued. Their blood is essential for refining arcanocite. And with a man like Drell leading the invasion, there's no telling how far he'd go. Drell was the one who killed Alicia's father. Not in battle, they used to be friends. But because Alicia's dad was once considered one of the greatest swordsmen in the nation, Drell, years after his retirement, decided to challenge him to a duel, just to prove he was better. Real classy. And as if that wasn't enough, after mortally wounding him, Drell looked Alicia in the eye and then blew up their house, just because, enraged. Alicia nearly grabbed her father's sword to strike back, but her dying father stopped her. Drell wouldn't hesitate to kill her, he warned. In his final moments, he begged her not to give in to revenge because it would only drag her down a dark path of endless war. Instead, he wanted her to become a hero, someone who saves people, and promised he'd always watch over her. Having experienced Drell's cruelty firsthand, Alicia tells Clen that the only way to ensure Luna's future is to stop the Bolates and drive them out of Haydn. Clen knows she's right, but he's still slightly annoyed that he now has to protect a place he once planned to destroy. Alicia is happy he's willing to help. She says she'll get ready to leave right away, but Clen tells her to stay. If he's going to intervene directly, he can't let people know he's doing it just because Alicia asked him to. He needs a better excuse. And luckily, he's got one. Drell has been kidnapping dark beast children to turn them into wizards for his army. That, Clen decides, is reason enough to get involved. This also gives Clen an excuse to see just how strong these wizards really are, and honestly, he's a little excited. He assumes Alicia must be itching to take revenge on Drell for what he did to her father. But her father's last wish was clear. He wanted her to become a hero, not someone consumed by vengeance. Alicia remembers that promise, but after everything that's happened, she finds it hard to call herself a hero anymore. She feels like nothing more than a walking corpse, someone forced to carry out orders. Still, Clen challenges her thinking. What does it really mean to be a hero? Even if Alicia doesn't believe she is one, Clen is sure that Nell sees her that way. After all, Nell's life is so much better now, and that's largely because of Alicia's efforts. Realizing he's right, Alicia agrees to stay behind. Clen then transforms and rushes into the forest, heading straight for the Bolate army. Meanwhile, the Bolate army has just broken through the second fortress on their march toward Haydn, and Rod is growing increasingly worried. If they're not stopped soon, they'll reach hit it. Acting quickly, he races alongside Mikkel along the cliff face, pointing at a shallow river up ahead, possibly their last good chance to slow down the Bolate advance. Back in the city, Alicia takes Nell and Luna with her into town. While walking through the streets, they suddenly hear the sound of someone getting badly beaten. At first, Alicia is concerned, until she realizes it's just one of the bandits who managed to survive her earlier attacks. She quickly loses interest. The townspeople know all about the bandits and the chaos they've caused. So when they recognize this one, they don't hesitate. Nell is a little frightened. That particular bandit used to torment her constantly, but Alicia reassures her. There's no way he'd recognize her now, after how much she's changed. Unfortunately, he does recognize Alicia. And the moment he spots her, he tries to redirect the townspeople's anger by shouting that she's the hero who released the giant sea beast from the mine shaft. Some townsfolk turn in confusion, but by then, Alicia has already slipped away. Even if they had seen her, it wouldn't have saved him. In the end, all the bandits found in the city are hanged. Still, the townspeople are growing deeply concerned. First, there was Clevitus' attack. Then came the Bolate army, followed by an ancient octopus monster. Jokingly, they wonder what's next, radioactive wasps, glacial worms. But one thing's for certain, no matter what comes, they're determined to protect their town. Elsewhere, Alicia and Nell search for a place to stay, but it's difficult with the city on high alert. Before entering the inn, Alicia asks Nell not to refer to her as a hero. She wants to keep her identity hidden for now. As soon as she opens the door, two large men block her path and accuse her of being one of the bandits. Alicia is unsure how to handle the situation, but luckily their mother arrives and tells them to stop bothering the guests. Phil tries to explain that Alicia looks suspicious. She has an eye patch and a sword, but considering recent events, walking around armed is pretty normal. What really catches attention, though, is the presence of a hedemic baby. Carrie, the innkeeper, asks for an explanation. Alicia responds that she and Nell are bodyguards assigned to protect a very important individual, the baby, at all costs. The explanation is convincing enough. Though Carrie suspects there's more to the story, she's not interested in prying into the affairs of paying customers. She asks what they need, and Alicia requests a room for two, preferably with a bed comfortable enough for a baby. Carrie quotes a price of 2 silver coins per night, so Alicia pays for a 2-night stay. Carrie directs them to the first room on the left and tells her sons to help carry the luggage. Pete offers to help Nell, though she insists she can manage. He persists, so she hands over the bags, and he instantly regrets it, realizing just how heavy they are. Eventually, Pete and Phil carry everything up to the room. Alicia seems satisfied, and Carrie says she can come downstairs if she needs anything. Once she leaves, Nell suggests they put Luna to bed so he can rest. However, neither of them realizes that one of Maynard's insects has spotted Luna. Now that Maynard knows exactly where the Hittite prince is, he is sending his entire insect army after him. A little while later, Alicia is gazing out the window, wondering whether Clen has reached the battlefield yet. But her thoughts are interrupted when Nell calls her over to take a look at something, Luna's very first baby tooth. A few minutes later, Carrie knocks on the door to let Alicia and Nell know that their food is ready. But when she sees Luna still asleep, she tells Alicia she can just come down and bring the food back to the room. Alicia follows Carrie downstairs, and Carrie points to the food waiting at the end of the table. On her way over, Alicia overhears some bar patrons grumbling about how everything going wrong is the hero's fault. According to them, if those so-called heroes hadn't gone out and challenged one of the Beast Lords, then Clevitus wouldn't have destroyed Haydn, and the Bolate army never would have started this war. Public opinion on heroes is absolutely tanked. People have every right to be mad. In their eyes, all the heroes have done is make life worse. Just as Alicia is about to head back upstairs, she suddenly senses the presence of a dark beast. In the next moment, something smashes through the downstairs window and lands right next to Pete. He thinks it's just a regular ball and casually reaches to pick it up until Alicia yells at him not to touch it. Unfortunately, she's too late. The ball suddenly expands and launches Pete into the ceiling. Surprise! It's actually a giant centipede. Maynard then enters the inn like it's just another Tuesday and announces that this isn't some ordinary bug. This centipede hails from the dark beast forest, meaning it's on the same level as some of the most powerful dark beasts out there. One guy in the bar doesn't even wait for the lecture to finish. He came here to drink, not fight an overgrown insect. So he dives out the window, a perfectly reasonable plan if only Maynard hadn't already stationed hundreds of bug monsters outside. So yeah, the guy gets eaten. Bad luck. Maynard reveals that this whole creepy crawly ambush was part of his plan to make sure no one leaves town until his mission is complete. Just to make it extra official, he introduces himself as the highest mage in Lord Drell's army. Everyone panics. No one expected Drell's forces to actually attack their village like this. But Maynard clarifies, he's not here to take over. His mission is simple, to confirm whether the hedemic baby here is of royal blood. Alicia immediately realizes how serious this is. If Maynard already knows that Luna is here, she has to get him out, fast. Suddenly, a scream from upstairs breaks through her thoughts. Nell is in trouble. Turns out Maynard already sent his subordinate wizard, Nashifenite, up to their room. And she's currently pinning Nell against the wall, using the bed frame like she's auditioning for a villain role in a horror movie. Nell can't figure out how Nay got in through the window, this is the second floor after all. Nei casually explains that she just flew up using her axe. Her power lets her attract and repel anything made of iron. She simply hurled her axe into the air, clung to the handle, and let physics and magic do the rest. Apparently, she discovered this ability thanks to a massive dark beast turtle with an iron shell. Any metal weapon that touches it gets stuck there forever. But enough story time, Nei has work to do. She pulls a pill from her bag and approaches Luna. When Nell demands to know what she's doing, Nei says she's giving Loomis medicine to test his magic potential. If the baby can use magic, his eyes will change color and he'll be fine. If not, well, he might cough up blood and die. A nice, even 50-50. Horrified, Nell yells for her to stop. Hearing the commotion, Alicia rushes upstairs, but Maynard uses his centipede to smash her into a wall before she can get there. He doesn't know exactly who she is, but he's not about to let her ruin his plan. In fact, he's ready to kill her. Meanwhile, Nell struggles against the bed frames holding her down. Nei smugly informs her that the force from those frames could stop a charging bull. With 2 frames, Nell would need the strength of 2 bulls, and her tiny arms obviously can't manage that. Except they do. To Nei's shock, Nell shoves the frames aside and knocks her out cold in one swift push. Maynard hears the crash, but finds his centipede suddenly immobilized. Alicia, still alive, has tied its antennae into a knot, leaving it dazed. She kicks it to the floor and dashes to the room. When Alicia bursts in, ready for a fight, she finds Nei unconscious, Nell holding Luna and a gaping hole in the wall. Nell admits she made the hole accidentally when she pushed the bed frame, which hit Nei and flew right through the wall. Alicia has no time to process this. They need to escape. Grabbing her sword, she tells Luna to stay close. They leap out the window, and Alicia slices through the airborne bugs blocking their way. By the time Nei regains consciousness, they're long gone, and she can't pursue without Maynard's help, since the bugs attack indiscriminately. A short while later, Alicia and Nell make it past the city limits, where the bugs stop chasing them, thanks to Maynard's order to only surround the city. If they're lucky, they might reach the forest before dawn, but luck runs out quickly. A second wall of insects blocks their path, far too many for Alicia to cut through. They'll need to hide. Back at the inn, Nei reports their escape. Maynard asks if she at least tested the baby's magic, but she admits Nell knocked her out first. He realizes they underestimated the women, and that the blonde is definitely Alicia Glenfall, the hero. He knows because he was there when Drell killed her father. A hero traveling with an ordinary baby makes no sense, which means Luna must be the Hydemic prince they've been hunting. Practically gleeful at the thought of torturing a hero, Maynard orders Nei to gather all the townspeople in the main square. The town leader boldly tells him that bugs won't make them submit. Maynard responds that none of this would be happening if the king of Hyden hadn't foolishly attacked Clevidus. Now that the capital is destroyed, Clevidus might return to claim the land, so the Bolate army is here to protect them, which is really just an excuse for an invasion. Without the king's magic weapon, the people have no way to resist. Mar tells the townspeople they have a bigger enemy to worry about right now. The blonde woman from earlier is one of the 13 heroes who started this entire mess. If they want to take out their frustrations, they can start by hunting her down. Meanwhile, Drell's army is marching toward the falling capital of Hyden, wading across a shallow river when Drell suddenly halts. He senses someone watching. Under the bright moonlight, hiding is pointless, so he calls for the stalker to show themselves. From the bushes, Rode emerges and immediately thrusts his frost spear into the water, freezing the entire river solid and trapping the feet of Drell's soldiers. His own troops, equipped with ice cleats, move freely while even the enslaved dark beasts struggle to stand. Mikkel rallies their forces, telling everyone to target Drell's wizards first so they can't undo the ice. Drell knows the frost spear's abilities, but even at full power it shouldn't be able to freeze an entire river at once. He suspects Rode stationed mages upstream to chill the water beforehand, a clever tactic. Clearly, Rode has mastered his regalia. If he defeats Drell here, the war could end. But Drell warns it won't be that easy. Rode lunges forward, but Drell swats him aside with a heavy backhand slash. Rode retaliates with an ice magic strike, but Drell dodges and the attack freezes harmlessly behind him. Their blades and spear clash, and Drell grudgingly admits Rode's skill. A regalia may grant power, but true mastery takes strength and training. Still, he doubts Road has the power to break the shackles of the world. Then Drell unleashes his trump card, summoning a massive dragon's claw in midair. Road is stunned. Regalia aren't supposed to create physical objects, but the claw is real, and it sends him flying across the frozen river. Mikla and the soldiers try to assist, but Drell fuses magic with his sword, creating something far beyond a normal weapon. When some of Road's men rush in, Drell annihilates them and his own soldiers with another dragon claw strike. To him, anyone weak enough to die from such an attack is unworthy to see the world beyond their borders. Road, bewildered by Drell's talk of borders and shackles, demands an explanation. Drell says his goal is to destroy the legend of the heroes, a tradition that has, for thousands of years, driven people to challenge unbeatable foes with hopeless methods. No one has ever questioned it until now. He spares Road's life, calling him a worthy opponent, but warns there's no way he can win. Exhausted, Road can only watch as Drell continues his conquest. Suddenly, Clevis, the southern lord of the dark beasts, descends onto the battlefield. The sight of him sends a shiver through soldiers and beasts alike. Clevis singles out Drell, saying he has a question. Someone has been kidnapping both human and dark beast children, and he's heard it's connected to Drell's magic. Is Drell responsible? Drell asks if a beast lord really traveled all this way just to ask a question, but Clevis replies that it's part of his duty. If someone defiles his lands or his people, the law demands he kill them himself in retribution. When Drell scoffs and questions his right to decide the law of the land, Clevis grows irritated and drives his claws straight through Drell's stomach. He tells him this could have been avoided if he just answered the question, but even with a hole in his chest, Drell shows no fear. He says he knew Clevis would come for him, and that he has no intention of fighting a battle he knows he can't win head-on. Drell had planned ahead. A third eye suddenly opened on his forehead as he prepared his ultimate spell, Dark Ekra Prison. This caught Clevis completely off guard. He had no idea humans could wield Dark Ichor. In the next instant, Drell's body exploded, splattering Clevis in blood. When the smoke cleared, the only things left were Drell's sword and a massive black sphere, the prison, enclosing Clevis. But Drell wasn't dead. Before detonating his body, he had transferred his consciousness into his sword, abandoning his human form and becoming a being composed entirely of the sword's magic. The Dark Ekra Prison was the result of that sacrifice, and Drell was certain even someone as powerful as Clevis wouldn't break free easily. Inside the sphere, Clevis appeared unconscious and unmoving. Drell intended to leave him there until he perished from starvation or old age. Road could only stare in shock. The 13 heroes had failed to defeat Clevis, yet Drell had done it so quickly. If Drell possessed that kind of power, Haydn would stand no chance. More determined than ever to complete his mission, Drell ordered his surviving troops to move out. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, Alicia and Nell were still fleeing from Maynard when Alicia suddenly sensed something was wrong. She couldn't tell what it was, and there was no way to contact Clevis from here, so she told Nell they needed to keep moving. Unbeknownst to them, a mob of angry townspeople was slowly closing in, following Maynard's orders. The townspeople shouted that they had lived in this forest all their lives, and they knew every path and shadow like the back of their hands. It was only a matter of time before they found Alicia. They had always despised the so-called heroes. Aside from slaying the occasional rogue dark beast, the heroes never did any real work, yet they were worshipped as saviors. The people's tax money was spent funding the heroes' luxurious lifestyle, and now look where that had left them. They knew Alicia was hiding in the house and demanded she come out to face them. There was no way she could escape. Since the villagers were trapped inside town, Alicia had expected to be cornered eventually, just not this soon. Fortunately, it didn't seem like Maynard or his swarm of insects had arrived yet. Still, she urged Nell to stay away from the windows and remain hidden, because protecting Luna was their highest priority. Running would mean nothing without a safe place to hide. Suddenly, Phil grew impatient. He shouted that if Alicia wouldn't come out, he would burn the entire building down with her inside. As he raised his torch, Pete grabbed his arm and ordered him to stop, saying this was going too far. Then Phil's father, Mark, stepped forward. He reminded Phil that their forefathers had built the water wheel centuries ago, when they first settled here, and he wasn't about to let his son destroy it for nothing. Phil tried to argue that handing Alicia over to Maynard was the only option, but Mark smacked him across the head and snapped that they would not blindly obey some foreigner just because he commanded insects. Mark then approached the building and introduced himself as the man responsible for the village's defenses. He promised Alicia that if she came out to speak with him, he wouldn't let anyone harm her. He only had a question to ask. Alicia had no other choice but to trust him. She stepped outside, and Mark immediately asked what had happened to her regalia. When Alicia explained that she no longer had it, Mark pressed her further. Had she sold it for money after abandoning her mission? Alicia shook her head and told him the truth. She had lost it in her battle against Clevitus. She and the other heroes had been completely crushed. She admitted she understood why the townspeople despised her, given how everything had turned out. To her surprise, Mark wasn't angry. He told her that if she had sold her regalia for coin and fled like a coward, he would have killed her on the spot. But if she had genuinely fought Clevitus and simply lost, then he couldn't hold that against her. After all, it was the king who insisted on upholding traditions and sent the heroes on an impossible mission. They hadn't been given a choice. Alicia was stunned by how reasonable Mark was. He didn't dwell on the past. What he wanted to know was her opinion of the future. Should they keep clinging to their traditions and try to go beyond Dark Beast territory, or abandon the dream and live as they always had? Alicia thought back to her fight against Clevitus. After being torn apart and hurled into the air, she had caught a glimpse, however brief, of the world beyond the Dark Beast lands. It was vast, round, and endless. Perhaps it sounded foolish coming from someone who had failed so miserably, but she believed they must never stop trying to reach the outside world. There were truths and opportunities that could only be discovered by taking that leap of faith. She admitted she had recently met someone arrogant and terrifying, someone who treated her cruelly. Yet, without meeting him, she never would have gained a new perspective on the world. Knowing now that the world was far larger than anything they had ever imagined, Alicia refused to let anyone claim that striving toward it was meaningless. Mark was deeply impressed by her words. He told Alicia she was free to go. Some of his men might still resent her for being a hero, but he promised he would calm them down. However, escaping was still her burden to bear. She would have to find her own way through Maynard's wall of insects. Just as Mark turned to walk away, Maynard suddenly appeared, riding atop his massive centipede. Without hesitation, he slashed Mark across the chest, sneering that the man had ruined his game. Maynard had wanted the thrill of watching the villagers lynch the last surviving hero, but Mark had spoiled his fun by forgiving her instead. Alicia reacted instantly. With a swift strike, she cut the giant centipede to pieces. But Maynard slipped away, already summoning the rest of his swarm. The townspeople were in grave danger. Alicia shouted for everyone to get inside the house before they ended up as food, then leapt back into the fray, cutting down as many of the monsters as she could. Maynard mocked her mercilessly, impressed yet amused by her tenacity. "How long can you really keep this up?" he taunted. "Every one of these insects is deadly. You're so busy with the big ones that you didn't notice the small ones already biting you." He wasn't lying. Poison seeped into her body from countless stings and bites. Bees swarmed the skies, ants swarmed the ground, and even venomous spiders crawled among them. One particular spider's venom could dissolve blood itself, and that frightened Alicia more than anything. The only thing keeping her alive right now was the black ichor Clen had used to replace her blood. If the venom destroyed that, she would die for real. Maynard continued to gloat, but in the back of his mind there was something personal. He had once idolized heroes, but that ended the day a fire claimed his entire family, while the heroes did nothing. From that moment on, he hated them more than anything. Alicia's body began to tremble from the toxins coursing through her veins. Still, she couldn't afford to stop swinging. The swarm pressed in from every side. Then, suddenly, a familiar voice reached her ears. She glanced down and saw Clevitus's head emerging from her chest. With casual irritation, he told her to hurry up and finish what she was doing, because he needed her help. Inside the house, Nell and the villagers anxiously watched the chaos unfold. Their relief quickly soured when insects began crawling through cracks in the walls. In a panic, they stomped the creatures flat, desperate to protect the room where the future king rested. Grabbing whatever tools and scraps they could, they patched holes as fast as possible. They couldn't allow a single insect inside. Outside, Maynard continued mocking Alicia as she staggered under the onslaught. He spat that she was nothing but a fraud of a hero. Then he slammed his staff into the earth, summoning a massive scorpion from underground. With a thunderous crack, the beast lunged and struck, flinging Alicia into the nearby river. Underwater, Clevitus emerged again, studying her condition. He quickly realized why she was struggling. The venom. She gasped out a question. Did the poison really affect the black ichor? His answer was grim. Yes. It wasn't potent enough to destroy it completely, but until the poison burned out of her system, her wounds wouldn't heal. For now, her so-called immortality was gone. On the surface, Maynard laughed, calling out to her, "Do you really think hiding underwater will save you? I don't mind waiting until you come up for air, but I doubt your friends in that little house will survive that long." Back inside, the townsfolk managed to seal the last of the cracks. Relief was short-lived. Something heavy crashed through the roof, a massive larva, writhing and gnawing at the beams. Phil smashed it with a blow, but then more began to drop. Dozens. They weren't only devouring the house, but the forest itself. Meanwhile, in the village, the people Mark had ordered to stay behind knocked out the Bolate soldiers who had remained. But just as they secured control, they heard it, a strange rumbling sound rolling out of the forest. Something was coming. Nay told the men that it had already begun, though they had no idea what she meant. Some even questioned why she hadn't gone with Maynard when he rushed off. The answer was simple. She valued her life. Maynard was the master of all insects and an absolute lunatic. When he went into a frenzy, nothing around him survived. Back in the forest, Maynard laughed menacingly as the larvae devoured everything in sight. He explained with twisted delight that these larvae were special. They only hatched once every century, and when they did, they consumed all surrounding vegetation within minutes. By the time they finished, there would be nothing left of the forest. This wasn't about Alicia at all. Maynard simply knew the villagers relied on the forest's wood to make a living, and destroying it would ruin them. As an added bonus, once the larvae tore through the building, everyone inside would become insect food. Two birds with one stone. Alicia refused to let it continue. Bursting out of the water, she charged at him. But she was already too late. Many of the larvae had sealed themselves into cocoons, and within seconds, hundreds of moths emerged. They swarmed directly at her. When she slashed at them, their wings scattered dust that clouded her vision. Blinded, Alicia staggered. Maynard seized the chance, commanding the scorpion to strike. Its blow sent her flying. Struggling to free herself, she realized her strength was nearly gone. The swarm pressed closer. She was about to be consumed. At that moment, Clevitus finally decided to intervene. From the shadows, he drew Stream Splitter, pulling the blade into Alicia's reach. Maynard froze in shock at the sight. That weapon looked far too much like a regalia. Clevitus calmly instructed her, "All living beings are mostly water. Insects are no exception. Think of them as a river, and finish this quickly. I still need your help." Alicia grasped the sword. With one swing, the insects around her dissolved into mist. But it wasn't enough. Planting her feet, she gathered every last shred of strength and unleashed a flowing water slash. The strike carried like a torrent, surging across the forest. And in this case, the river was the swarm itself. Every last insect was eradicated in moments. From town, Nate could see the rising cloud of insect remains and was left speechless. Someone had truly annihilated Maynard's army in an instant. As the swarm vanished, the magic stone embedded in Maynard's chest cracked. Stripped of his power, he collapsed, utterly helpless. Alicia leveled her blade at him. Maynard tried to act defiant, insisting she'd never make him surrender. She didn't care. With one decisive blow, she knocked him unconscious. The battle was won, but Alicia's body gave out and she collapsed soon after. When Nay rushed out to check on her, she froze in shock. Clen was already there, carrying Alicia in his arms. She hadn't known he had returned from his mission. Clen scolded Alicia, saying she had wasted far too much time fighting a weakling like Maynard. They had to leave immediately. The situation had changed. This wasn't even the real Clen, but a clone born from the dark ichor within Alicia's body after he had been sealed in a blood bubble. Now, he needed her help to break free. Alicia weakly asked if he had at least managed to defeat Drell. Clen's answer was grim. He was fairly certain that Drell had the power of one of the Dark Lord beasts on his side. Defeating him would not be easy. Over in what's left of the kingdom of Haydn, evacuation efforts were underway. Roughly 80% of the survivors had already been relocated to the underground bunker, but Queen Tala refused to leave, at least not until she found her son. One of the elders tried to convince her, reminding her that she was the only one left fit to rule the kingdom. But Tala shook her head. "What kind of mother would I be if I abandoned my child?" she declared. The elders sympathized, but still questioned her certainty. After all, there had been no sign of the boy since the attack. Tala explained her reasoning. The forge of Haiden still burned bright red. Under normal circumstances, with the king dead, the forge would fall dormant until someone worthy appeared. But the fact that it was still active could only mean one thing: a member of the royal bloodline yet lived. And the only other with the king's blood was her son. Protecting him until he was old enough to wield the forge was now their top priority. So long as he survived, Haiden would too. Even so, frustration weighed on her. If only she had fled with her son when she had the chance. The elder pressed her for details, and Tala admitted she had seen this coming. She had a premonition that the heroes would be too weak to defeat the dark beasts, and that Clevitis would destroy the capital in retaliation. But she hadn't known when it would happen, and so her chance to escape slipped away. At that moment, her messenger Fabio returned, bearing urgent news. He reported that Drell's army of 50,000 had clashed with the army of Ezen along the Morel River. Ezen's soldiers fought valiantly, but they were powerless against Drell's overwhelming magic. Then, out of nowhere, Clevitis appeared and wiped out nearly half of Drell's army in an instant. But what happened next was even more shocking. Drell somehow conjured a strange red sphere that managed to trap Clevitis. This revelation left Queen Tala shaken. How could they possibly contend with someone strong enough to defeat a dark beast lord? Worse still, Drell and his remaining force of 20,000 were now marching toward Haiden. Tala rejected the idea outright. It defied their traditions. Only heroes were meant to challenge dark beast lords. But Fabio countered that Drell was technically a former hero, still bearing his regalia, and therefore met the conditions of prophecy. Even so, Tala refused to believe it. A man who led an army to invade another nation could never be the hero foretold. So, Queen Tala declared that she would personally go out and shatter Drell's regalia, since he did not deserve to wield it. Fabio hesitated and asked whether it was even possible to shatter a regalia. Tala explained that as long as she wielded the sacred hammer of Haiden, she could, because it was the only weapon capable of both forging and breaking regalia. The elder immediately tried to dissuade her, reminding her that only the king of Haiden was permitted to wield the hammer. But with the king dead, Tala said she would serve as king until her son could claim the throne, and that gave her every right to use it. None of them could argue with that, so they all helped her don her armor, while Fabio rushed off to fetch the hammer. Tala thanked him, then lifted the weapon from its case. With its power in her hands, she vowed to confront Drell and his army head-on. Meanwhile, back in the village, Pete dragged Nay over to Alicia, just as she had asked. He still couldn't get over how amazing she looked when she wiped out all those insects with a single swing. He even swore to become her personal errand boy for as long as she stayed there. Alicia was a little surprised by how nice Pete was being, but since he insisted, she asked if he could also bring Nell to her. Pete immediately rushed off, eager to serve. Clem chuckled and congratulated Alicia, saying it looked like she had just acquired her first servant. Alicia told him to stop teasing. It wasn't like she wanted a servant. What she really wanted was a new set of clothes, since she was still covered head to toe in bug juice. At that moment, Nay finally spoke up, sounding irritated. She asked why they dragged her there in the first place, since her knees hurt and she just wanted to go home. Alicia thought it was strange that Pete had managed to capture Nay so easily, since Nell had mentioned that Nay could control magnetism. But Pete hadn't used any weapons, so with nothing metallic to manipulate, and against Pete's sheer muscle, she had been powerless. Alicia decided it was time for answers. She told Nay to spill everything she knew about Drell and his ties to the Dark Beast Lords. Nay blinked in confusion, claiming she had no idea what Alicia was talking about. So Alicia rephrased, asking if Nay had ever seen Drell's dark ichor, a kind of blood that moved on its own. Nay seemed genuinely baffled, saying she had never seen anything like that, and frankly it sounded disgusting. Alicia could tell Nay wasn't lying, but Clen was certain that what Drell had used was indeed dark ichor, and only dark beast lords were capable of producing it. On his own, Drell would never be a real threat, but if one of the lords was backing him, that changed everything. With Clevitis present here, the only dark lords unaccounted for were Zathir of the west, Wrathwell of the east, and Varden of the north. And if one of them had dared to bare their fangs at Clevitis by empowering Drell, then Clen swore they would pay the price. Speaking of Drell, Alicia asked Clen if it was safe for him to leave his main body behind and appear here in this smaller form. Clen reassured her that it wasn't his real body anyway. In fact, it was better this way. If whoever was aiding Drell believed that Clevitis was still sealed, it would make it much easier to lure them into a trap. All the while, Nei had been trying to get their attention, clearly growing impatient. Nei finally spoke up, asking if they were finished, because she would very much like to leave now. It was true that without nearby metal, she was powerless, but she still had the metal from her own gauntlets. Normally, she couldn't manipulate them while they were in contact with her skin, but thanks to her thin arms, she managed to slip a hand free. With a little effort, she tossed the gauntlets into the air and hooked her handbag onto them, using the metal to levitate herself and fly away. Neither Clen nor Alicia expected that, so they simply stood and watched as Nei floated off into the sky. While flying, Nei spotted a cart heading toward Alicia and Clen. Inside were Nell and Luna, and she immediately noticed the cart's wheels were lined with metal. Seizing the opportunity, she descended onto the carriage roof. Knowing that Drell would scold her if she returned empty-handed, she declared that she would be taking them with her to hit it. Using her gauntlets, she knocked out the brothers driving the cart and then lifted the entire carriage into the air, carrying Nell and Luna with her. However, just when Nei thought she had gotten away clean, she suddenly realized that Clen was sitting casually right next to her. A moment later, Alicia pressed her blade to Nei's neck. Alicia explained that the cart had been prepared specifically to trick Nei into giving them a ride straight to hit it. Since Alicia's sword was forged of heidened steel, Nei couldn't control it, and knowing she was outmatched, Nei did the sensible thing and surrendered. She agreed to peacefully transport the group to hit it. Down below, the brothers regained consciousness and were relieved to see that Clen and Alicia had boarded the cart safely. They waved enthusiastically, shouting that Alicia would always be welcome back. The other villagers echoed the same farewell as the flying carriage passed overhead. Alicia, hearing their voices, felt a deep warmth. She was happy that she had made such a positive impact, and for the first time, she truly felt like a hero. Of course, Clen immediately teased her about the smug expression on her face. Alicia countered that she had earned it, since she did save the entire village. Clen reminded her that she had only managed it with his help. Meanwhile, Nell was still processing everything. She admitted she hadn't expected Alicia to be so heroic, but what truly shocked her was learning that Luna was actually the Prince of Haiden. She asked nervously if it was really okay for someone like her to hold him so casually, since normally commoners weren't even allowed to touch a royal. Clen dismissed the concern, saying that was a dumb rule. Nell, he explained, was in a unique position. She had been vital in keeping Luna alive, and thanks to her newfound strength, she was now several times stronger than a regular human. If anyone ever dared call her worthless again, she should simply crush them. Alicia quickly stepped in, clarifying that Nell should not go around crushing people. But Clen shrugged, saying that was how he had always dealt with his haters, and he didn't see a problem with it. Soon, the group approached a vast mountain range. Beyond it lay the capital city of Hidit. Clen turned to Alicia, asking if she was prepared. He warned her that he couldn't reveal his presence to anyone, so she would be on her own. He also reminded her that Drell must not learn about the dark ichor within her body, which meant her ability to heal would be restricted. Even so, Alicia stood firm. She said she was ready to fight and ready to finally avenge her father. With that, Nei guided the carriage up and over the mountains, flying straight toward Hidit. As soon as Hidit comes into view, it's clear that the city is already under attack. Drell must be nearby, so Alicia scans the battlefield and spots him standing atop one of the castle walls. Wasting no time, she grabs Nei's arm and forces her to steer the carriage directly toward Drell. Meanwhile, on the castle walls, Princess Tala rallies the kingdom's magic sword-wielding knights to face Drell. She reminds them that their swords are nearly as powerful as Drell's regalia, meaning if anyone can fight him, it's them. Still, it's obvious these knights are marching to their deaths. They bravely charge in, trying to surround Drell, but he merely stands calmly, calling them irritating. The knights realize they're finished, yet out of loyalty to their kingdom, they throw themselves into battle, hoping to distract him long enough for the archer squad to land a decisive shot. Even with a clear line of sight, the archers fumble and Drell transforms himself into a sword to evade the attack. Tala and the knights are stunned, unsure if they've gone mad or if Drell truly turned into a blade mid-fight. The shield bearers form a defensive line, but they are blown away in an instant. Drell seizes Tala by the throat, commending her efforts but declaring that she can never become king. Tala knows this well. She has no royal blood, and only those with the strongest lineage can claim the throne. Normally, if all the king's successors perish, the succession passes to the closest relative. But Drell intends to end that tradition today. Though uncertain if she'll survive, Tala is confident that a single strike with her hammer could shatter Drell's regalia. All she needs is a distraction. Just then, Alicia crashes down from the flying carriage. The sudden entrance confuses Tala, but it's the perfect opening. She seizes the moment and strikes at Drell's sword form. Elsewhere, Klen and Naru watch from afar. Naru worries whether Alicia can handle Drell alone, but Klen explains it doesn't matter if she wins or loses. All he needs is for Alicia to keep Drell occupied. Drell and his mysterious ally are after the Forge of Haiden, so Klen intends to reach it first. That's why he brought Luna. Only someone of royal blood can break the seal. Knowing the forge's location, Klen leads Naru to a castle wall, pointing out that the forge lies just beyond it. He could smash through himself, but he wants to remain unnoticed, so he orders Naru to do it instead. She hesitates, doubting her strength against the solid wall. But Klen reminds her that when he healed her, he infused her arms with the power of a troll, making her several times stronger than even the mightiest of them. Trusting his words, Naru gives the wall a push, and to her shock, she sends a massive block flying far across the courtyard. It lands directly among the guards assigned to protect the forge. Jokingly, she feels like her kill-death ratio just spiked, but Klen brushes it off, telling her to focus. They don't have much time. At the forge's entrance, Fabio and a few guards survive Naru's unintended strike. Before they can regroup, Klen uses his shadow powers to subdue them. Then, placing Luna's hand on the seal, he unlocks the entrance to the legendary forge. A little while later, a guard swoops down to inspect the strange bubble that Clevitus's body is trapped in. He's puzzled. Surely Clevitus should have been able to break free, so why is he still stuck inside? The guard, Gart, gives the bubble a kick, but it's ridiculously solid, far beyond what he can break. Just then, Rod appears around the corner and introduces himself. He saw Gart fly down and assumes flight must be his magic ability, so he asks for a favor. He needs Gart to fly him to the capital of Haiden. By now, Drell and his army must have started their attack, and Rod insists he has to stop them. At first, Gart plans to ignore him, but he remembers watching the earlier fight from a distance. He clearly saw Rod get utterly stomped by Drell. So why would Rod want a rematch now? Rod admits he probably doesn't stand a chance, but someone has to stop Drell before he reaches the Forge of Haiden. If Drell gains access to it and fuses it with his magic, a catastrophic calamity will sweep across the land. The mention of magic reminds Gart of something Zathir had said before this mission. If calamity really is coming, maybe he should look into it, and Rod could serve as the perfect cover story. So Gart agrees to help, but only under two conditions. First, once they arrive, Rod has to assist him with his mission for a while. Second, Rod isn't allowed to ask any questions about who Gart really is. Rod asks what happens if he breaks the deal. Gart bluntly replies that he'll kill him. Rod says he can't betray his homeland, but otherwise he accepts the terms. With that, Gart unfurls his wings and tells him to hold on. So Rod grabs onto his ankle and the two head off toward Hidit. Meanwhile, inside the capital, Klen is still struggling to open the forge seal with Luna's help. It won't budge. Smashing through feels like a bad idea, so he decides to try from above. Leaving Naru to watch over Luna, he leaps up to the forge chimney. The heat blasting out is overwhelming, hot enough to reduce any ordinary dark beast to ash. But Klen is no ordinary dark beast. He's built different. With zero hesitation, he dives in. Of course, halfway down, he realizes maybe he isn't that built different. The heat is brutal. He manages to hide in the shadow of a loosened brick to escape the furnace's intensity. Even dormant, the forge's power is immense, and Klen would love to examine it up close. But he's fairly certain stepping inside would roast him alive. Then he notices something alarming. The forge doors are wide open. Even worse, Naru lies unconscious outside, and Luna is missing. Moments later, the mysterious figure who approached Naru earlier steps out of the shadows, holding Luna in his arms. To Klen's shock, the man is none other than King Haiden himself. But judging by his decayed body, he should very much be dead. Meanwhile, elsewhere on the battlefield, Alicia is still fighting Drell, and it's not going well. Drell mocks her, sneering that she's nowhere near as strong as her father. As much as she hates to admit it, he's right. She can barely keep up and eventually gets knocked back into a squad of Drell soldiers. But they're small fry, not worth her time. Brushing them aside, she frantically searches the battlefield for Drell's whereabouts. She spots him heading toward the castle, so she wastes no time and rushes to catch up. As soon as Drell lands on the wall, the queen and her remaining soldiers immediately fire more arrows at him. But at this point, it's nothing more than a minor inconvenience. He effortlessly slices every arrow in half. The arrows may not have harmed Drell, but they did buy enough time for Ichika to catch up. She strikes him with a rising sword slash. Unfortunately, that very technique was originally developed by Drell himself, so he easily blocks it and counters with something far stronger, the Dragonfly Sky Slash. Hundreds of slashes rain down on Ichika, but to Drell's surprise, she emerges with all her limbs intact. Impressed, he praises her talent, saying it's only natural for the daughter of a swordmaster. But Ichika doesn't want empty praise. Raising her sword, she demands to know what happened between Drell and her father and why Drell killed him. Drell explains that her father, Margot, was once his friend. They trained in the same sword school and even competed against each other for the title of hero. Ichika is shocked. This is the first time she's ever heard of such a thing. Drell, equally surprised that she doesn't know the story, puts away his sword and begins recounting how he came to be known as Drell the Dragon Slayer, while her father gave up on the path of becoming a hero. 25 years earlier, Drell and Margot faced each other in a tournament to determine who would wield the very first regalia, a weapon forged under the orders of King Haydn. At that time, the two were still very close friends. As the tournament began, they agreed to fight with everything they had. In the end, Margot emerged victorious. Though disappointed by his loss and the missed chance to become a hero, Drell congratulated his friend with good sportsmanship. As the champion, Margot was bestowed the title of Swordmaster and entrusted with the regalia. From that moment onward, he was bound to the duties of a hero, fighting dark beasts and protecting humanity. When Margot drew the regalia from its sheath, he immediately felt its overwhelming power surge through him. But the king warned him that the weapon was incomplete. Every regalia possesses a soul, and the first being slain by it becomes the soul trapped within. The king urged Margot to choose his first target wisely. Later, Margot and Drell met in a tavern to discuss the future. Margot revealed his plan to assemble an expedition force for his first mission. He wanted to begin with weaker threats, since accidentally slaying something insignificant, like a dark beast bug, would waste the regalia's first soul. For his first true target, Margot considered going after one of the northern dragons. Hearing this, Drell panicked and warned him not to attempt something so reckless. While he understood that Margot wanted a powerful darkness sealed into the regalia, targeting a northern dragon was a death sentence. These dragons served the dark beast Lord Van, and no one could challenge them at that time. Worse still, they lived in the perilous snowy mountains, terrain impossible to traverse with an incomplete regalia. But despite the warnings, Margot insisted it was the only choice if he ever hoped to stand against a dark beast lord in the future. Drell was already skeptical about Margot's chances of defeating even a regular dragon, let alone a dark beast lord. The legends claimed that heroes would eventually overcome the dark beast lords, but Drell never truly believed those stories. Still, he knew better than anyone that Margot was the strongest swordsman of their time. If anyone could accomplish such a feat, it would be him. Margot stood up and told Drell they needed to begin preparations for the expedition. Though fully confident in their ability to slay a dragon, things turned out far worse than he expected. The snowy mountain terrain was brutally harsh, and while they spotted a dragon fairly quickly, the creature spotted them as well. It immediately unleashed a torrent of flammable stomach acid, wiping out the entire expedition force in a single attack. Only Margot and Drell survived. Seeing how dire the situation was, Drell urged Margot to retreat, but running wasn't an option. The dragon would simply hunt them down. Their only chance was to kill it before it killed them. That was easier said than done, especially since the dragon stayed airborne, well out of their reach. Thinking fast, Margot came up with a risky plan. He told Drell to use the rising dragon technique on him. It was the only way to get close enough to the beast. Though reluctant, Drell obeyed, charging straight at Margot and striking him with the rising dragon slash. The maneuver worked perfectly. Launched high into the air, Margot came down on the dragon, shredding its wings to pieces. The beast plummeted to the ground, setting the stage for Margot's final battle. From the sidelines, Drell could only watch in awe as Margot unleashed an extraordinary performance. Even grounded, the dragon remained ferocious, but Margot proved fiercer still. With each swing, his strikes became sharper, more precise, and more relentless. For the first time, Drell began to believe that his friend truly might slay the dragon, but tragedy struck at the worst possible moment. Just as Margot prepared to deliver the finishing blow, his foot snagged on a rock for the briefest instant. That tiny opening was all the dragon needed. With one swift strike, it tore off his foot, along with his last hope of victory, and his dream of becoming a hero. Realizing the end had come, Margot hurled his sword to Drell and shouted for him to finish the fight before the dragon silenced him forever beneath its stomp. Drell, still reeling from the shock, barely had time to process what had happened, but he knew what he had to do. Seizing the regalia, he charged straight at the weakened dragon. Thanks to the immense damage Margot had already inflicted, Drell was able to decapitate the beast with one decisive slash. Standing over the dragon's corpse, he could hardly believe what he had just done. Drell turned to check on Margot, ready to tell him that they had actually slain the dragon. But before he could, the regalia began absorbing the dragon's soul. Drell felt the immense power flooding into the blade, strengthening him like never before. Yet, as the process finished, he suddenly sensed a terrifying presence behind him. The battle had drawn the attention of the dark beast Lord Van. The next thing Drell knew, he awoke in a puddle of his own blood. Strangely, his body was perfectly intact. Somehow, he had survived. From there, Drell managed to carry Margot and one other survivor back to the city. Afterward, Margot retired from the path of a hero and lived out the rest of his life until Drell eventually killed him. Though he had earned the title of Dragon Slayer and was hailed as a hero, Drell never truly believed in the hero legends. He was convinced the stories were riddled with lies and that the most important truths were being concealed by the royal family. The queen insisted she had no idea what he meant, but nothing she said could sway him. When Alicia asked if he thought magic was the missing truth hidden from the legends, Drell confirmed it. He explained that ever since the day he encountered Van, the voices in his head had been telling him so. And now, he knew exactly what needed to be done. Calling upon necromancy, Drell summoned the skeleton of an undead dragon and used it to knock Alicia off the wall before flying away on its back, intent on claiming the forge for himself. On the ground, Alicia survived the fall, though her arm and leg were badly mangled. Gritting her teeth, she used the dark ichor to heal the injuries, though the pain was excruciating. Through their mental link, she tried warning Clevitis that Drell was heading for the forge, but Clevitis silenced her. Something far more pressing was unfolding before his eyes. The King of Haydn was about to throw his own grandson into the forge. Alicia asked Clevitis what he meant, but before he could respond, the queen approached her. Smiling faintly, she admitted she was relieved to see Alicia alive. She had believed she'd perished at the hands of Clevitis during the mission. She then asked if any of the other heroes had survived. Sadly, Alicia confessed she was the only one to return alive. Though clearly disappointed, the queen expressed her gratitude. In Hidadet's current state, all they could manage was stalling Drell's forces. None of their soldiers had the strength to stand against him or his terrifying magic. Their only hope was Alicia and her regalia. She pleaded with her, would she fight to stop Drell for the sake of the kingdom? Alicia promised she would do her best. But before moving on, she had something important to reveal. Tala's son was alive and currently in hiding. The queen froze in shock. Until now, no one had known his whereabouts. But Alicia insisted that Luna had to be her son. After all, he clearly carried royal blood. The queen was overcome with joy at the revelation. She begged Alicia to take her to him immediately, but Alicia warned her it was too dangerous. She promised to bring Luna back safely so Tala could see him again. That wasn't enough for the queen. She may have been a monarch, but more importantly, she was a mother. If her child was in danger, she could never sit idly by. Understanding her resolve, Alicia reluctantly agreed to bring her along. Meanwhile, inside the forge, the beheaded king's body prepared to sacrifice Luna to the flames. Clevitis watched carefully, curious to see how events would unfold. But when it became clear that the king meant to throw the boy into the furnace, Clevitis grabbed his arm to stop him. He asked if this was truly how a grandfather should treat his grandson. The king admitted he knew how twisted it was, and that he did not want to do it. But he wasn't in control. His body was being manipulated by the will of the forge itself. The ritual, he explained, was ancient. For generations, every child destined to inherit the throne was cast into the forge and reduced to ash. Moments later, the flames would resurrect them in a new body, one incapable of disobeying the forge's will. Normally, after the naming ceremony, the chosen heir's name would be engraved upon the forge. Once marked, the forge compelled the child to leap into the fire of their own accord. But because Clevitis's earlier attack had interrupted before Luna's name was inscribed, the forge had been unable to compel him. Instead, it had revived the king's corpse to forcibly complete the ritual. by throwing Luna inside. Clevitus asked if all this meant the king himself had once been forced to jump into the forge and remade as its puppet. That was exactly the case. In fact, the same fate awaited Luna's father, the king's son, but he had been so terrified of becoming enslaved by the forge that he chose the heroic way out, stylishly leaping off the castle walls to his death. The king thought his son's choice was foolish. Taking his own life only meant the next in line would be chosen, and the cycle would continue. And so, the tradition persisted. The king dropped Luna into the forge, reducing him to ash in an instant. Meanwhile, overhead, Drell soared on his undead dragon. The voices in his head had grown so convincing that he now believed the only way to save the world was to destroy it by drawing out whatever was hidden inside the forge. On the ground, Alicia urged Tala to climb on her back so she could carry her to the forge as fast as possible. As they moved, Tala explained that since she was never a true ruler, much had been kept secret from her. When her husband was destined to become king, he too took his own life. But before he did, he confessed one thing. All the true heroes were gone, and the heroes of today stood no chance against the Dark Beast Lords. At the time, Tala hadn't understood, but now she wondered if he had been right. Haydn had over 1,000 years of history, yet there were no records of anyone ever defeating a Dark Beast Lord. There wasn't even proof that slaying one would grant freedom to explore the wider world. So who then created this legend in the first place? She once tried asking her husband, but he had been unable to speak of it, only giving her a sorrowful smile. To Tala, it seemed the kings of Haydn had been hiding the truth for generations. If so, then the former king had knowingly sent Alicia and the other heroes on their doomed mission, fully aware they lacked the strength to win. She called it irresponsible, but Alicia disagreed. Even if their chances were slim, she would have gone anyway. For her, it was never only about defeating a Dark Beast Lord. It was about facing an impossible challenge with the optimism of a hero. That was the way she wanted to live, and the way she intended to continue, until she broke the cycle. Drell, however, had succumbed to despair. He abandoned the path of the hero, choosing instead to destroy everything. Of course, Alicia still sought revenge for her father, but more importantly, she had to stop Drell to prove that her belief in living as a hero was right. Tala reassured her, saying she was a great hero. But Alicia admitted she saw herself as weak, not as strong as Drell, and nowhere near the level of the Dark Beasts. Even so, she had no intention of quitting. She had once thought about giving up, but then she met someone who refused to let her. At that very moment, that person, Clevitus, was laughing. He found the scene before him hilarious. The king of Haydn had just dropped Luna into the forge, or so he thought. In reality, the boy who had burned to ash was nothing more than a shadow clone created by Clevitus. The real Luna rested safely in his arms. With a mocking grin, Clevitus asked the king what would happen now, since he had clearly failed the mission the forge had forced upon him. The king gave no reply. He only stared at Clevitus as his body leaned backward and toppled into the forge. As he watches the king's body turn to ash, Clen is surprised by the sudden turn of events, but he knows this won't be the end. He yells for the master of the forge to come out and face him already. Moments later, massive flames erupt from the forge, destroying the mountainside in a violent explosion. Drell sees this happen, and the voice in his head urges him to act quickly because there's no time to waste. Alicia and Tala also witness the forge explode, and they see Drell heading straight for it. Tala grows deeply worried about Luna's safety, but Alicia tells her to stay back, warning that it's far too dangerous now. She's confident Clen would never let Luna die so easily, but the real threat is if Drell manages to reach them first. Just as Drell is about to enter the forge, Gart swoops overhead and drops Rod off, just as promised. Rod calls out Drell's name and swears he will stop him. Activating his spear, he forms a massive ice spike at its tip. The ice javelin pierces straight through Drell's dragon, and Gart, finding the clash interesting, decides to linger nearby and watch. When they hit the ground, a massive dust cloud rises, and Rod wonders if he actually defeated Drell with that strike. But as the dust settles, he realizes Drell managed to block it. Rod is thrown back, and Drell prepares to finish him off. But suddenly, Alicia steps in and knocks Drell's swords away. Growing annoyed with their constant interference, Drell decides to end things quickly. Alicia and Rod regroup, meeting each other properly for the first time. Rod asks if she's a hero and Ichika confirms it. They briefly introduce themselves, but there's no time for pleasantries. They must face Drell together. Rod asks if he can count on her to fight by his side, and Ichika replies she was about to ask him the same. Both know that alone, they stand no chance. Drell finds it laughable that they think teamwork will be enough. He tells them their strength is bound by the limits of their human bodies, limits he no longer shares. In an instant, Drell appears behind them and slashes with such force that both Ichika and Rod are sent flying. He follows up, striking again and launching them into the air. While they're disoriented, he flies up, stabbing Ichika in the chest. Rod tries to strike while he's distracted, but Drell sees it coming, catches his wrist, and sends both of them crashing back down to the ground. Hovering above them, Drell looks down with disdain before descending to finish them. The two desperately need a plan. Ichika tells Rod to use his ice javelin once more. Confused, he doesn't see the point, but he trusts her. He points his spear skyward and summons another massive javelin of ice. As expected, Drell dodges easily, scoffing at the obvious attack. But then he notices Ichika is no longer on the ground. She had leapt onto the ice javelin to propel herself behind him, ensuring he can't escape. At that moment, Rod uses the last of his strength to freeze Drell's feet in place, giving Ichika the perfect chance. She drops down and slashes him clean in half. However, Drell is barely inconvenienced by his body being bisected, as his true form now resides within his sword. The blade spins violently through the air and slashes at Ichika, cutting off her arm and sending her crashing to the ground. Rod rushes forward to catch her, but above him, he watches in horror as Drell's body reforms from his dark ichor. Drell tells them their efforts are admirable, but ultimately meaningless, because people like them can never become true heroes. The very fact that humans must implant magic stones in their bodies just to use magic proves their inferiority. He declares to Rod and Ichika that all humanoids on this continent are weaker than the true humans who once ruled the entire world centuries ago. Current humans and dark beasts alike are nothing more than pawns in the endless game of the true humans. Unless someone ends it, the cycle will continue forever. That, Drell explains, is why he intends to burn away every trace of the so-called hero legend, to reduce it all to ash so the world can start anew. Until then, he will commit as many atrocities as necessary. Through his mental connection with Ichika, Klen hears Drell's entire speech and finally understands his true motives, and by extension, those of his master Varden. Klen himself has never met these true humans Drell speaks of. He assumes they must have vanished long before he became a dark beast lord. That also means the strange book must be one of the last remnants of the true humans legend. The moment the book appeared, the entire forge disappeared. Klen realizes it wasn't the forge itself, but this book that had been driving the kings of Haiden to kill themselves, resurrecting them as puppets to serve its goals. He begins to suspect that everything, the manipulation of the royal family, Ichika and the other heroes being sent to fight in the southern beast forest, the wars between human kingdoms, even his own desire to destroy humanity, was orchestrated by this book's influence. Klen laughs bitterly at the absurdity of it all, mocking himself for being manipulated so easily, despite being a dark beast lord. He inherited no memories from the lords before him, so there are truths he still doesn't know. But one thing is clear, his very existence must have been designed to fight against the elusive true humans that Drell mentioned. If that's true, then everything he thought he knew about the world was a lie. Reflecting further, he wonders why he had been bothering with this child at all. With that, Klen sets Luna down and begins walking away, no longer interested in destroying humanity, or even involving himself with them any further. Klen lets the Book of Toa fall to the ground and turns to leave, but through their mental link. Ichika hears his entire speech and calls it utter nonsense. Klen is genuinely surprised to hear her voice again. He honestly didn't think she would have survived this long against Drell. Her current condition is dire, but that doesn't matter to her right now. She demands to know if Klen really thinks it's acceptable to just walk away after everything he's done. But Klen replies that he finally understands what Drell and Varden are after, and frankly, he has no reason to stop them. If they want to erase every trace of the heroes from this world, that's none of his business. Whatever happens to fragile humans as a result is not his concern. He tells Ichika that if she truly wants to survive, she should abandon her identity as a hero and let events play out. But Ichika was never worried about her own survival. She asks him if he can honestly say the world is meaningless after looking into Luna's eyes. She doesn't care about true humans, true heroes, or the so-called prophecy, because none of it matters. Those true humans the legends speak of, if they aren't here anymore, they clearly weren't strong enough to survive in this world. And if they couldn't, then what right do they have to call themselves superior? Clen falters, realizing she has a point. He turns to look at Luna, who is crying but trying to stand. He stumbles at first, but after several shaky attempts, the boy manages to take his first step. At that moment, Clen is reminded that humanity still has room to learn and grow from its past mistakes. Perhaps there really is hope for a better future. Meanwhile, outside, Drell taunts Alicia, telling her she should know she cannot possibly defeat him without her regalia. But Alicia charges anyway. Drell smirks, declaring this is the end, and moves to slash her apart, only to be knocked back at the last second by a massive block hurled by Blocko. The interruption buys Alicia enough time to sprint toward her regalia. Drell quickly recovers and dives after her, but Alicia slides beneath him and, once close enough, uses her dark ichor to pull her severed hand back to her body. Drell's confidence wavers for the first time when he realizes that Alicia also has dark ichor coursing through her veins. That brief hesitation gives her the opening to unleash a rising dragon strike. Everyone on the ground watches in awe as her attack connects, but Rod quickly notices something is wrong. Drell managed to block her strike with his sword, leaving him unharmed. Worse, during the clash, he also slashed Alicia across the chest, sending her tumbling helplessly through the air. Mocking her, Drell sneers that a fake hero like her, with no ambition, never stood a chance against him. But mid-fall, Alicia retorts that he's the one who lacks ambition. He was so quick to dismiss the hero legends as fake just because he was weaker than the Dark Beast Lords, never once considering that maybe it was his own lack of skill holding him back. Infuriated by being called weak, Drell charges at her recklessly. But Alicia, calm and unfazed, tells him he might want to get his eyes checked, because when she struck earlier, she wasn't aiming for his body. Her true target was his sword. Drell ignores Alicia's words and raises his blades to deliver the final blow. But just as he's about to swing, the sword suddenly shatters in his hands. He stares in disbelief. Something like this should be impossible. A regalia isn't supposed to break. Alicia admits she isn't entirely sure how she managed to damage it either. But during their clashes, she kept hearing faint screams coming from the blade, so she knew it could be broken. Hearing this, Tala recalls how she struck Drell's sword earlier with the hammer of Haydn. Though it didn't shatter then, it must have left a critical weakness. Meanwhile, Alicia is still plummeting, but Nell rushes forward and catches her before she crashes into the ground. She's battered, but alive. The same can't be said for Drell. His body is made entirely of dark ichor now, and with his regalia destroyed, it's clear that Varden has abandoned him. Suddenly, dark ichor erupts violently from Drell's body, tearing his flesh apart. His screams echo as his form is ripped away piece by piece. He begs Varden not to forsake him, crying that he hasn't destroyed the hero legend yet. But it's far too late. Varden is reclaiming his power, leaving Drell to die in agony. In his final moments, Drell reflects on his hatred of the prophecy. Deep down, he realizes the real reason he despised it was because it gave Margot false hope that ultimately led to his death. That's why Drell made his deal with Varden in the first place, hoping to save both himself and Margot. But as he's torn apart, he wonders why he let things spiral so far. Before long, his body completely disintegrates, leaving behind only a cloud of dark ichor, mist, and the shattered remnants of his regalia. Even though Drell is gone, Alicia worries that Varden might still make a move. She knows she wouldn't be able to stop him, but at that moment, Clen arrives. He tells her there's no need to worry. Varden isn't the type to deal with things personally. And without a host, the dark ichor has no true power. It will eventually drift back to Van on its own, relieved. Alicia is also glad to see that Clen chose to keep Luna safe after all. Moments later, Tala rushes over, overcome with emotion at finally seeing her son again. She drops everything and runs to embrace him, but Clen stops her. For a moment, Alicia fears he might refuse to return Luna, but that's not the case. Clen simply believes it's only right that a future king should return to his mother by his own strength. So, he gently sets Luna down on the ground and tells him to walk to her. Tala is overwhelmed to see her little boy standing on his own 2 feet. Tears stream down her face as Luna makes his way over to her. The reunion between mother and son is heartwarming, though Alicia can't help but find it ironic. After all, it was Clan who destroyed the city and practically kidnapped Luna in the first place. Moments later, the exhaustion from her long battle catches up with Alicia and she collapses onto the grass. Ryo and Nelleru rush to her side, worried that her injuries might be fatal, but she reassures them that she'll be fine. "Wounds like this won't be enough to kill me," she insists. Instead of worrying about her, she urges Ryo to go inform the soldiers below that Drell has been defeated. Understanding, Ryo picks up Drell's broken regalia and rushes down the hill to spread the news of Dill's death. Clen watches him go, pleased with how things turned out, though he decides to keep the Book of Toa for now, at least until he uncovers the truth about it. Suddenly, one of Arden's avatars appears behind him, warning that he will regret his actions, as the legend of Toa will soon come to pass. Clen, uninterested in hearing more from Varden, uses his shadows to kill the familiar. This chapter comes to a close, but the story is far from over. Clen still has much to learn about the humans. Meanwhile, Ryo marches onto the battlefield, loudly announcing that Drell has been slain by the hero Alicia. As proof, he raises Drell's shattered regalia for all to see. The moment the soldiers of Drell's army realize their commander is dead, they lose the will to fight, knowing they stand no chance. The army retreats, and Ryo, unwilling to allow needless bloodshed, orders his men to stand down and let the enemy leave. The news spreads quickly across the battlefield. Even those still fighting drop their weapons as soon as they hear the message. As for Nay, she has spent the entire time lying in a stack of hay, unsure of what to do now that the war has ended. Gart, who observed the battle from afar, takes flight to report all he has seen. Meanwhile, by the lake, the head priest of the kingdom watches over the blood sphere containing Clevitis. When one of his guards foolishly attempts to touch it, the priest stops him, warning that whatever lies inside is still alive and has chosen not to emerge. He orders his men to ensure no one approaches or even looks at the sphere. Back in the ruins of Haydn, Alicia, Nell, and Clen rest inside one of the few houses left standing. Nell has just finished bandaging Alicia, though the treatment is unnecessary since Clen already healed her. Still, it would raise suspicions if anyone noticed her lack of injuries. Yet despite her wounds being closed, Alicia continues to feel the agonizing pain, making it hard for her to focus. Clen explains that he had to heal a fatal wound instantly to keep her alive, so the lingering pain is only natural. On top of that, he allowed her to bleed slightly so no one would suspect the presence of dark ichor, which he intends to keep secret. He asks Nell to make sure she tells no one. Finally, Alicia asks Clen if he believes what Dill said, that the so-called true humans were the only ones capable of becoming real heroes. Clen admits that he has no idea. All Clen knows for certain is that the name Toa holds incredible importance to the legend, and the book has been manipulating the kings of Haydn for generations. The secrets of the original legend must be hidden within it. Unfortunately, Clen hasn't been able to read it because it is locked. When the book appeared, it came with a key, so Clen tried opening it to uncover its contents. To his surprise, the key didn't work. The only logical conclusion is that the key he has must open a similar book elsewhere in the world. But where that book may be, or how many such books exist, remains a complete mystery. Just then, there's a knock at the door, and the three are informed that the queen wishes to meet them. They head to the castle, which is heavily damaged from Clevitis's attack. Fortunately, the throne room is still intact, so they gather there. The queen thanks them for coming, and says they probably already know why she summoned them. First, she expresses her deepest gratitude, for without their help, Haydn would have been completely destroyed. However, Nell seems unusually nervous. Suddenly, she breaks into tears and starts apologizing to Tala. Confused, Tala asks why she's acting this way. Clen reassures everyone that it's nothing, but Nell continues crying, feeling unworthy of having fed the future king in Tala's place. Tala walks up to her and gently tells her that she would never consider her unworthy. In fact, she sees Nell as her savior. During the time Luna was missing, one of Tala's greatest fears was that he might starve without his mother to nurse him. Learning that Nell had cared for him brought her immense relief. Hearing this, Nell says it's an honor beyond words. After that, Tala tells everyone that if there is anything they desire, land, money, or even a title, they should feel free to ask. Alicia considers the offer seriously, intrigued by the idea of receiving a noble title. But Clen already knows what he wants. He requests to stay and work in the castle as Luna's magic instructor.